Hi, I'm Geoff Dunn, Executive Director of Community Television of Santa Cruz County, welcoming you to Elections 2002. Joining me this evening as co-hosts are the inimitable John Sandidge
Dunn.
and KUSP's Rachel and Goodman. Thank you both for being here. Providing us with local coverage throughout the evening will be Joel Domhoff, who will be cutting to every 20 minutes this evening through 11:20 p.m. All right, our first guest this evening is Congressman Sam Farr. And Sam, we thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you, and thank you for doing this coverage. It's interesting to see a community access channel really covering political issues. Wonderful.
Yeah, you've been a welcome guest here, and we have your regular show from Washington, D.C. That plays on here regularly. Curious, what's it been like campaigning here in 2002?
Well, I think this congressional race has been probably the easiest. The Republican opponent just didn't mount a campaign. I don't think he even put out much literature or anything. The Green Party had a good candidate, and Libertarian Party in this race. The polls are just closing as we speak, and we'll be getting the results very soon. I don't think the focus at all was on the congressional races. It was on the open assembly seat. It was in Monterey County with the sheriffs, and up here, and judgeships down in Monterey County. In Santa Cruz, obviously, you have some races here, local races, in with the county supervisor in Santa Cruz.
In the aftermath of 9/11 and the downturn in the American economy, and particularly here in this region, just curious, what are some of the issues that you've been encountering as you go throughout the district?
Well, I think people are really focused in California. I think they know what the issues are, and the issues really are, a lot of it about local life, quality of life, schools, how crowded they are, transportation, traffic jams that we all have to face commuting to work. It's a lot of local stuff, but at the same time, they don't want the federal government being so cumbersome in this post 9/11 Homeland Security that they start infringing on personal rights and civil liberties. They certainly, this community isn't a community, and I say this is the entire district, they're not a community that's excited about going to a war in Iraq. And I think it's a community that's really worried about quality of life issues, about livable wages and jobs. And right now, the unemployment is so high because of the effect on Silicon Valley and downturn, which has affected the tourism of this area. So those are real issues. And I think the difference here is I find people are more focused on solutions than they are nationally.
On the north end of the district, you've got this progressive, very left, liberal, Democratic hotbed in the city of Santa Cruz. And as the district fans south, it gets a little more conservative.
Well, very much conservative.
Yeah.
I represent from the city limits of Santa Cruz, the northern city limits, all the way down to King City. And I would say that King City is quite different than Santa Cruz.
So what's it like representing that diverse of a congressional district?
I love it. Because I think politics is the art of compromise, and it's really about getting people, and leadership is about getting results. And I think if you think about how do you get results here, my dream or vision, and I think you have to have one of these when you get into public office, you got to have, where do you want to go? It's not just reacting to the agenda. Well, I've lived here all my life, and I've sort of gotten educated by the land and by the people. And what I find is that we have the best land in the world. We grow more crops than any place in the United States, any place in the world in diversity of crops. We just take it for granted. This agriculture is absolutely incredible. And it doesn't live on government subsidies. And it's fresh and it's organic. It's moving in the direction of fresh to market. A lot of real exciting stuff, cutting edge stuff, wonderful stuff. And the people that do all this are just exciting from all parts of the world that come here. Great integration of cultural differences. Universities that have settled here, UC and Cal State Monterey Bay, and the community colleges, private schools like the Monterey Institute of International Studies and Monterey College of Law, and then the Aquarium and the Packard Foundation, just assets that are the envy of most of the places in the United States. And a lot of federal presence. We've got the National Marine Sanctuary, the Los Padres National Forest, the Pinnacles National Monument, the Elkhorn Slough National Marine Sanctuary, Naval Postgraduate School, Defense Language Institute, big military accounting office at Fort Ord, Fort Ord property, the Fort Hunter Liggett property, just a lot of stuff.
It is an incredible district.
It's great.
When I was a kid, I was in 4-H in SoCal, part of the district, And your dad used to be a judge at the county fair every year for horticultural stuff. And he was always very good to me, and I was interested in politics at a young age. And I was wondering what it was like growing up with a dad like that who was so involved politically in the region.
Well, I tell all the high school students that I was never interested in wanting to do what my father did. And I imagine there's a lot of teenagers that say, I'm not going to do what my parents do. And I tell them, don't be too sure that you don't go into the same profession. Because I was the last to think that I would get into politics. But what changed me was being in the Peace Corps. Yeah. And, you know, petitioning government for change. And enjoying that so much that I wanted to come back to the United States, and particularly California, where I had a long history of family involvement in public service, and wanted to get into public service. And went to work in Sacramento as a staff member, not thinking I'd ever be in elective office. And as I got older, I really realized, and a lot of my friends encouraging me, saying, you know, you ought to run. And ended up on the Board of Supervisors in Monterey County, and then in the State Assembly, and now in the United States Congress. But what I find, and this is the vision, is that if all politics being local, if you can really make areas as models, you know, as we say, demonstration programs, we use that a lot in grant writing. But I really do think that we have the ability to demonstrate to the world how a society can live in a multicultural democracy. And that's Central Coast of California. And do things that sustain the environment, not degrade from it. Learn how to use the ocean without ruining it. Learn how to use the land without ruining it. Learn how to control urban sprawl so that we just don't repeat what all of California has sort of done, is just expand, expand, expand. And so the challenges are in this district, from the most conservative to perhaps the most liberal, is to how do we, as a society in general, how do we all, you know, rise the tide for all of us to live a better life? And you know, now that I'm a grandfather, I think it makes me even more of a futurist, as you really begin thinking this is not just one generation, this is two generations and out from there. So I think the challenges are phenomenal. Then to bring the government, the federal assets to this area, and make them do a better job at how they're spending their money, and how they're administering their services.
You're going perhaps into a Congress that may be tilting toward the Republican side more. We don't know all the results yet. And I saw a recent headline that said, Sam Farr sticks his neck out. You voted against the Iraq resolution in Congress, and you joined quite a few colleagues in doing that. I was wondering, as you're campaigning this season, are you hearing a balance of people concerned about the economy versus people concerned about terrorism? I know that those have been pitted against each other. They're really linked in a lot of ways because of the huge funding increases for the Defense Department that we've seen as a way of doing diplomacy in a way that seems to be tilting further that direction. What are you hearing back from not just Santa Cruz constituents, but perhaps your King City constituents about their concerns in those ways?
Well, I think what I hear is so much different in California is different when I hear in Washington. I think California is test driving the future. I think Washington is looking at the future through the rear mirror, and I think that's why a lot of people are getting elected in a more conservative way. I don't think that's good for our state. I think we're a thinking state, we're a creative state. We're not afraid to address challenges and take on new things. That's the inventiveness of California. And yet I see the administration as a cut, squeeze, and trim of less government and no government. And that I don't think is healthy. I think California learned, we've learned big things in this state. One, in the most massive tax cut that ever existed was Proposition 13. And although a lot of people cheered that, what they began to see right after that is all of a sudden the schools weren't well funded, the roads weren't well repaired, that the infrastructure that those taxes paid for were hurting. So business started realizing we cannot really survive here if we just have cut, squeeze, and trim mentality. And I think that the liberals on the other side started realizing if there isn't a good economy and if people can't pay taxes, you don't have the wherewithal to do all this. So now, and look at it, that was 20 some odd years ago, look at the number of bond issues that are on the ballots now that are passing with extraordinary votes. Because people are coming around and saying government isn't that evil. We need to encourage government to pay for some of this infrastructure, improve our schools. This is not the mentality you see nationally. This is really a California process that I think is way ahead of the country. And unfortunately, I think what's going to happen in Washington is going to be harder for healthcare providers. We're going to find our hospitals here shorting out emergency room doctors and other kinds. They just won't. They won't be able to work for the reimbursement they're getting from the federal government. I think you're going to see them in the next year if we don't have some major changes, and if the money all goes into the war in Iraq, it's going to trickle down to the people who pay for that, or the services that pay for that are going to be education and healthcare and seniors programs, and those are going to have a major effect on the Central Coast. So what I see at the national level is not good for California.
Indeed, we are seeing that doctor shortage starting to show up in a big way, and it's connected to the Medicare cut, which this blamed Congress may or may not be able to do anything about, depending on whether they go back and hack at it. So that's something we'll all be watching, and we're glad you're going back again and representing us.
Thank you very much. Well, we're assuming a lot.
Yes, it's early yet. We have a lot of results in just a few minutes that we'll be hearing the first batch of from Joel Domhoff, but we look forward to it.
Well, thank you. The number of people that congratulated me today, just going to and from the polls and around, is more than were our registered voters. So.
Indeed.
Yeah, well, community TV, based on exit polls, is now predicting Sam Farr. Okay.
Sam, you mentioned earlier that it's more conservative down toward King City, liberal up here. So there's a strong balance between the conservative side of your district and the liberal side of your district. But the Republicans don't ever seem to mount a good candidate. They don't seem to get anybody to get up and really give you a challenge. Is it because they're afraid of you, or they just have given up, or what's the deal there?
I don't know. They've had great challengers. They just all lost.
It's been the same guy, hasn't it? I mean, this guy's been running 3 years in a row. He raised $85 this year, I read. I mean, it's not like they care.
Well, I think it's more about service. I mean, this area has supported Democrats and Republicans. Yes, the majority of the registration is Democratic, but it isn't great.
Yeah.
And if you add the number of independents or declined to state and Greens and other parties, there's a large percentage of that, almost 16%. And I mean, you look at this area. It elects Bruce McPherson to the state senate and Fred Keeley to the state assembly. So I think it's much more balanced. What I do find in common, I don't care what the partisan label one goes by, is people really care about education. They care about the future for their children. Mm-hmm. They care about traffic jams. They care about livable wages. They now care, everybody cares about cost of housing. There isn't a house affordable to anybody, rich or poor. You got to be super rich.
Absolutely.
To buy a house in this area.
Yeah.
And people who make wages, everybody sitting in this room, and myself included, and I make a good wage, I couldn't qualify for a mortgage on my own house. So we got a real disaster here that is on our own hands, that you can't blame on Washington or Sacramento. It's essentially a function of how we decide we want to make it possible for people to live and rent in this area.
Well, there's certainly a limit to how many people the infrastructure can support, both in water and in roads and in housing and all of that. Where do we do like maybe in Europe, where they build high-rises around the old towns, and we're looking at a European culture? Like Italy has 3 times as many people as California, about the same size, but all of the cities are surrounded by high-rises. Is that something we would look at?
Well, I think you have to increase density. I don't think it has to be high-rises, but I think we can better utilize urbanized space. You know what Aspen, Colorado is doing now? They're requiring 1-for-1. You build a house, you got to build a guest house for people who service your house, for the people who are gardeners or cleaning folks or who work in the restaurants or in the hotels. Aspen doesn't have any space left for the workforce.
Yeah.
So they're making the people that can afford to build a housing in Aspen to build workforce housing, 1-for-1. I mean, that's really inclusionary. We can do Fort Ord, big.
Yeah.
Lots of places can be built there, many. We can better utilize space within all our cities. And the example is right here in Santa Cruz, right out this door. You look at what happened to Main Street after Pacific Avenue before the earthquake and after. And you know what? There's higher densities downtown. There's more single SROs for fixed income or elderly, more of them now than there were. There's more commercial space and it's more attractive, and frankly, I think a lot of the commercial establishments are doing better. Same thing with Main Street in Monterey, and about to be in Watsonville. I mean, in Salinas, and Watsonville's coming along too. We need to. That's increased density without destroying aesthetics. And if you do it with good planning and architecture, you get a much more livable city. It's attractive, and that's what we're talking about. Is, you know, we've just got to focus on this. And interesting, where the federal government comes in is we can assist with some planning money and mainstream money. We can assist with vouchers for elderly and for vouchers for low-income people. But I don't know whether the new Congress, as we're watching it tonight unfold, of what the leadership is going to be, or the majority is going to be in the House and Senate, whether some of these programs will be further cut or further expanded.
I'd like to go back to Washington, D.C. a little bit. I've been reading Nicholas Lehman's accounts of divisions in the Bush administration over the carrying out of the war in Iraq. And I'm curious, first of all, when you're back in D.C., does it appear as though the Bush administration is a monolith with a single view on the war, or do you get a sense of divisions inside the administration? And secondly, I'm curious, are there lobbyists back there actually pushing for the war? How does that work? Or are there people out of the administration lobbying Congress members to support the war effort?
There are members of the administration lobbying Congress to support the war effort, or support the president's position on the war effort. And that's where we had issue, because we felt that there ought to be a debate. One, there was no rush to judgment, didn't have to do this before elections. This has incredible effect on American society, both if we get into loss of life in Iraq in battle. Do American people really realize what that could be and how much that loss of life could occur? To what the costs are to the taxpayers. We've already increased the military budget by $40 billion. It's estimated that this war runs into hundreds of billions of dollars. Last time we went to war, we had all of the Arab countries supporting us when Iraq attacked Kuwait, plus our European allies and other allies around the world, so much that not only did they contribute men and women to fight that war, but they also picked up the cost, and the United States only ended up with about 10% of the entire cost of that war. That is not what this venture is all about, and these are high risks, because if we go it alone, which is what the president indicated he would do, we end up putting, I think, a lot of American people and properties in harm's way. American people are, first of all, people walking around with American uniforms on that say, I'm an American soldier, I'm a man and woman in uniform. Second are American properties, anything that has a flag over it, like an embassy or a consulate or a military base. And I think what you're seeing is that the State Department folks and a lot of the military privately are saying, we don't want to do this alone. And so I think that the rush in Washington to push this for a vote and to give the president a blank check was without a really good debate in America. And I think as people are learning more about it, they're very worried about what the consequences will be.
Got about a minute left. Do you think war is inevitable? Is that what you're getting the sense of back there?
I think it depends on how the world can put pressure on Saddam Hussein. I think he thinks that he could take on the United States in the court of world opinion. I don't think he could take on the world in the court of world opinion. And if indeed we can get the United Nations inspectors in or see that they can't get in, so that we can develop a response that is of court of world opinion, we're much better off than doing this alone.
All right, thank you very much for being here. Wish you well in the election. As I said, we've declared you the winner already based on exit polls. And we'll see you again soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
All right, we'll shoot over to Joel Domhoff with local results.
Jeff, thank you very much. We'll be tracking a host of local issues and races tonight, along with a handful of statewide contests that we feel are important for you to know about. Californians, of course, went to the polls today to elect their governor, where incumbent Gray Davis finds himself in a battle with 4 challengers, including Republican Bill Simon and Green Party candidate Peter Cameo. In the contest for lieutenant governor, Santa Cruz's own Bruce McPherson is going up against incumbent Cruz Bustamante. We'll also be tracking a pair of statewide propositions, 47, which will fund construction of educational facilities from kindergarten through the university, and Proposition 49, the After School Education and Safety Act, sponsored by none other than Arnold Schwarzenegger. Many people view this as Schwarzenegger's entree into the 2006 gubernatorial campaign, and yes, he will be back. In the 17th congressional race, incumbent Sam Farr, whom you just heard from, is expecting an easy contest tonight. He has a trio of challengers he's facing, including Santa Cruz attorney and Green Party candidate Ray Glock Grunick. In the state assembly race for the 27th district, former Santa Cruz Mayor John Laird is also expecting an easy victory. He's looking to replace longtime incumbent Fred Keeley. As we said, Laird, like Farr, expecting an easy win. There are 70 local races and ballot measures in Santa Cruz County this year, but the biggest one is in the 3rd District supervisorial race between two-term incumbent Marty Wormhout and Santa Cruz City Councilman Mark Premack. Political observers say this contest will be a close one, and we'll be watching it carefully throughout the evening. In the city of Santa Cruz, a dozen candidates are running for city council, including former mayors Cynthia Mathews, Mike Rotkin, and Tim Fitzmaurice. There are also a pair of hotly contested ballot measures in the city of Santa Cruz, Measure P, which would repeal the utility tax, and Measure Q, which would raise the so-called hotel tax by 1% on behalf of the county's Convention and Visitors Council. We'll be looking at those two closely as well. 3 council seats are up for grabs in the city of Capitola, where former city treasurer Bob Begun is challenging incumbent Stephanie Harlan, Dennis R. Norton, and Bruce Arthur. Down in Watsonville, 4 seats are up for grabs on the city council. Incumbents Ana Ventura Ferris and Ramon Gomez are unopposed, while in District 3, Ron Swank and Antonio Rivas are pitted against each other. And in District 7, Arcadio Viveros is facing off against Dale Skillicorn. There's also a hotly contested race in the Soquel Creek Water District, where a trio of environmentalists are challenging a trio of longtime incumbents. Now, one of the biggest school board races in the county features community TV's own CeCe Pinero. She'll be facing the likes of Michael Besky, John Wasserberger, and Luis Lynch in the at-large portion of the Santa Cruz City School District, which, if you don't know, stretches all the way from Davenport down to Aptos, a huge area, obviously. We'll be keeping a close eye on that one. And finally, folks, we'll be following Measure R in Scotts Valley, which would maintain the city's utility tax, and Measure S in Watsonville, which would add fluoride to the city's water supply. Actually, a no vote there would be a yes for fluoride. Obviously, we have a lot going on tonight, and we'll try to stay on top of it throughout the evening. We're going to do our best. We'll have our first update in 20 minutes, but now we're going to go back to our host, Geoffrey Dunn. Jeff.
Thank you, Joel. We're back, and we have Assembly candidate, the seasoned John Laird. John, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
I read your campaign literature.
Good.
Yeah, and we already have some results. It seems like you're ahead in the absentee ballots. How much?
I'm 2,000 votes up. There's a 15-point spread in the Santa Cruz County absentees. I haven't heard from Monterey or Santa Clara, but Santa Cruz is 51% of the vote, so I'm beginning to breathe a little easier right now.
Were you breathing hard earlier?
Yeah.
Well, you never know until it actually happens, you know. It's always a surprise, but the nature of absentee ballots has shifted a little. It used to be just people that couldn't get to the polls and were registered, and this time it's anybody can register. And traditionally, it's been very conservative. Fred Keeley lost the absentee 6 years ago when he ran the first time for the Assembly by a not small margin, and then went on to win really comfortably in the total vote. So it's an interesting sense of what absentee ballots are now. And Sam Farr's winning very comfortably as well in the absentee.
Well, good. Thanks for the update. Yeah. You know, I'm curious. Followed your career from day one, actually. You were a few years ahead of me at UCSC. And in this race, there really didn't seem to be much of a challenge, again, from the Republicans. But the fact that his name was Chuck Carter, which is the same name as a very popular and progressive Democrat city council member from Watsonville, Chuck Carter, whose name kept and face kept appearing
In
the
both the
local
primary and the general,
in the local
Sentinel ran the
newspaper.
picture of the wrong Chuck Carter in our campaign bio.
And I'm just curious, did that have a little bit of an impact? Did that concern you at all, that the people might be confused about the two?
Well, fortunately, fortunately for this reason, Watsonville is outside the district. If Watsonville was in the district, I probably would have done a mailer of the Watsonville Chuck Carter endorsing me over the Monterey Chuck Carter so that everybody was clear. And at any opportunity, I pointed it out, and he was very good-natured about it, the Watsonville Chuck Carter. He actually had endorsed me very early in the race and referred to himself as president of the organization of Chuck Carters for John Laird, and was always looking for a second and third member. And that was always nice for making the point. The Pajaronian did a great article about it. But just since there aren't many results in it, and we're just talking right now, the Chuck Carter from Watsonville tells a great story, because 2 years ago, this other Chuck Carter ran against Fred Keeley. And so the Watsonville Chuck Carter's mother called him up and said, "Son, I've really backed you in anything you've ever wanted to do, and I'll even back you now, but isn't it kind of stupid to run against Fred Keeley?" So even his mother was fooled, which gave me pause for making sure people knew which Chuck Carter was in this race.
Let me jump in just a second. For people, myself included, I'm not exactly sure where your district begins and ends. And you said Santa Clara. What part of Santa Clara? What part of our county? Where, give us the outline.
It's basically all of Santa Cruz County except Watsonville and some of the environs immediately adjacent to Watsonville, which is in the Simone Salinas district of 28th. And then it runs just through a 2-mile strip by Pajaro Dunes. That's sort of a narrow strip and connects part of Prunedale, Las Lomas, then down through Castroville, Marina, Seaside, the whole Monterey Peninsula, down the Carmel Valley, down Highway 68 to the outskirts of Salinas, and then the whole Big Sur coast to the San Luis Obispo County line. And then the new addition this time was the southern Santa Clara County areas of Morgan Hill, San Martin, and the Coyote Valley. So we share an assembly district with 1,600 residents of the city of San Jose. And where in this race, I'm reasonably well known in Santa Cruz County and somewhat known in Monterey County and have good connections and understand the issues. The Morgan Hill part of the district was just new. I could have counted on one hand the number of people I could name by name that lived in Morgan Hill before I started. So I joined the Chamber of Commerce and visited with the schools and the teachers and the college and worked street fairs, visited with the newspapers, and it got to the point that I have the endorsement of the mayor and all but one member of the city council in Morgan Hill, of the San Jose city council member that overlaps, and really even got the endorsement of the Morgan Hill Times and the Pinnacle, which has a Gilroy Morgan Hill edition. So I feel like my struggle was just working hard in that new territory.
And I gather that you found in your journey that there are quite a few things we have in common, like problems with transportation, Morgan Hill being kind of a commute city to San Jose. They don't like to be called that, but it's kind of turned into that through all the growth that's happened there, and the sprawl that they've encountered has been magnificent, and their water problems and so forth. I imagine that has given you thought that there are more in common with the two sides of the hills than we had formerly thought.
Well, you know, the voters of Morgan Hill, I think in the same year as the voters of Santa Cruz County, adopted a tight growth management policy. And they actually limit the number of housing units that can be constructed in a year. It's a slightly higher percentage than in Santa Cruz County, but nevertheless, it's a similar type of growth management. And they've worked hard to preserve the open space around their city as well, just as Santa Cruz City has done green belts. And so there are many similar issues, just as you say.
And another one, which I'm reporting on right now, is a doctor shortage. The medical breakdown, basically, of our system of health care, including the ERs closing and hospitals. And I understand southern Santa Clara County has an equally difficult issue attracting doctors, and it may get to the point pretty soon where we're both traveling quite a long way to get health care. And I don't know if that's something you hope to continue Fred Keeley's work at the assembly level to try to work with the state legislature and the governor in passing some legislation to protect us from rampant HMO takeover.
Well, I want to work on that. I mean, just in general, the campaign has worked for me in learning the issues and the people and focusing where I would like to go. And I'm really interested in coastal protection, water, health care, higher education, and some civil rights issues, and believe narrowing a focus in a term-limited environment is really important. And the issue you raised about health care in southern Santa Clara County, particularly the Morgan Hill area, is exactly what happened here when the medical clinic moved out of the west side and was a big issue in the 1981 city council race. The hospital, St. Louise in southern Santa Clara County, has closed. There are two major practices of doctors in southern Santa Clara County, and one has pulled out of Morgan Hill, and it looks like there are problems with the second. And there is a chance there are going to be no medical services below southern San Jose in Santa Clara County, and no emergency services. And so people are really worried. The Morgan Hill City Council has called it a crisis, and that was the only place that my opponent showed up for a debate out of all the debates, probably because it's the most conservative part of the district, and he felt fun just sort of bashing me and Gray Davis in that forum. But at the same time, he didn't have a specific idea about medical care and said it just needs to be turned over to the private sector and let go. And I talked about how we worked as a city to make sure there was medical care on the west side, and we were proven right at the time of both the storm of '82 and the earthquake by the fact that we weren't going to have services on the west side in a time of a natural disaster without some guidance from the government and support to make it happen, and that's what Morgan Hill needs to do, and the city is actually considering that, and that's something I think a state legislator can work with them on.
John, you said something to me prophetic early this summer. It actually really opened up my eyes and caused some concern. We were talking about the healthcare system, and in very general terms, you said something to the effect that it's going to need to break before we're able to really fix it. Where is healthcare going in the state? Does the legislature really have the ability to impact healthcare, or is it going to be dealt with more on a federal level?
The state has the ability to impact healthcare, and it is going in a bad direction. We have the highest number of physicians educated in public medical schools in California leaving the state to practice that has ever happened in recorded statistics. Emergency rooms have closed around the state because there's no mandate. Doctors' reimbursements either held steady or dropped, while the HMO or healthcare costs have skyrocketed way beyond the standard of living. So we're paying more for healthcare when the people actually doing the healthcare are getting the same or less. It's being sucked up by the bureaucracy in the middle, and in part that's what Fred Keeley was trying to get at with his bill that would have allowed mediation between doctors and HMOs in negotiating. Doctors are held hostage. And I think Sheila Kuehl is going to introduce a single-payer bill in the legislature this session. And I'm not optimistic about its passage, but that's the alternative to the system breaking, is forcing some kind of initiative that causes people to say, well, if we don't support that, what are we going to support to fix a broken system?
The other one that's on the table is Rebecca Cohn from Campbell, I believe, is going to introduce one to make all HMOs non-profit so that they can't skim the doctor's money and hand it over to their shareholders, which may or may not pass, but it seemed like another solution that she's hoping to work on from her end.
Well, there's this very interesting political brochure that's circulating that shows a fat, older white guy smoking a cigar, looking rich, and talking about the HMOs, and you open it up, and it lists the perks and the salaries of the CEOs and the CFOs of HMOs in the state. Oh. And it's showing that some of them are getting $4 million in salaries and more millions in bonuses. I mean, and that basically that money is being sucked up by them. And the interesting thing is the people that have published this brochure are the California Medical Association. And so it is the physicians in California that are feeling wronged, and the whole stereotype of doctors being very well off playing golf on Wednesday is a stereotype of the past, given the medical system in California. And we're about to face another crisis right here on the Central Coast, which is retirements in key specialties, so we won't have certain things covered neuro issues in Santa Cruz County is one. I think anesthesiologists in Monterey County is another. And the only thing that's protecting us from a complete disaster, very ironic, is the economic downturn, because doctors' investments are so poor right now that they can't choose to retire until the economy comes back. So it's keeping people in the professions that are thinly staffed, and it's the only thing that's protecting us from a disaster in some specialties. And my worry is that it will break down, and that will be the only motivation to fix it. And I'm really hopeful that we can take some steps to move ahead in the next few years, but the state budget being really in deficit, some of the only discretionary things in the budget are health and social services. And so it's going to be hard to move ahead in health care when actually the big battle this next session will just to keep exactly what we have. I'm not sure we can do that. So we're going to have to go to the voters at some point, go to the public, and basically say, what do you want? How are we going to get from here to there?
John.
What about this, an election in Oregon? They're going for a single payer, I believe it is, on their health care, where all of their medical will be paid for, everything will be paid for by the government of Oregon. Is that something that we can look at and say, well, maybe this is something that we could use? Or is this just a pipe dream by the folks in Oregon that think that it could really be paid for?
Well, it's not a pipe dream if you're willing to raise taxes. Mm-hmm. And that's what it really gets down to. If there's a combination of things like Rebecca Cohn's legislation, mm-hmm. that medical care be not-for-profit, and some additional money goes into it for taxes, and you do some things like mandate emergency rooms and then reimburse for them so it keeps it going. You're willing to trade doctors' student loans for having them repaid in exchange for them remaining in the state and practicing. There's a whole host of things that can be done to put this jigsaw puzzle together, but not with existing revenues, not with the existing system.
And have to change dramatically.
Yeah, and the real problem is that will the people that are the haves be willing to help fund health care for the have-nots on the fact that 7 million Californians not being covered by health care insurance, which is the case right now, is a hazard to all of us. So that's the kind of thing that is going to be the trade-off.
I know we're just about out of time here, but you have been part of the radio community here for many years, hosting shows up at KZSC at the university station, hosting shows at KUSP, and appearing on another station occasionally. I'm wondering if...
Not one that you ever appeared.
No, I would never have been on that one.
Me, yeah. Rachel's the only one who has any integrity.
Yes. Yes.
But
I'm glad you clarified that before the rest of us did.
Will you be able to take time to come back and host occasionally, or are you going to be just so tied up in Sacramento that we won't be able to see you as a radio host?
I'd love to do that. And I think it's very important, because one of the hardest things about being a legislator is staying in touch. And as we're going through what will be a horrible budget crisis where people won't understand things that are going on, I can't think of a better way of constantly educating people and keeping them up. It's just that my schedule the last period of time has been nuts. And if I can do it from a car in a freeway, on the telephone, or
you can now, actually.
Yeah. Oh no, I've done it. I just can't drive by the Rio Del Mar exit or a couple of other places. I'm on the phone and hang in there on the show, you know.
But we certainly hope that you're able to do that, because I think it would make a great way for you to communicate with everybody here. Let's hope that can happen.
Well, it's a great way for you to outreach to different constituencies and to get to know people in the region. Real quickly, we've got about a minute left. What did having that talk show, particularly at KUSP, do for your candidacy or your eventual candidacy?
Well, it did two things. There were people that knew me everywhere, and I even was in Monterey at a couple of events where people recognized me by my voice and had never met me, which was a startling experience. And it also got me up to speed on a whole host of things I needed to be. If I didn't know about something, I'd invite people on, have the conversation on the air. Everybody would thank me for great public education, but I'd walk away feeling like I had a handle on an issue. It was very important, and the diversity of who was on that show was very important. I mean, it was never a common issue. It was going from underwater parks and marine life to education, and I even I even took flack for having the owner of the mystery spot on.
That's right, that's right.
Very scientific.
Well, you should have. All right. Well, we thank you for being on with us. We won't take any flack for that. And we'll look forward to having you on again.
Do you have another
Thanks for serving us.
projection, though, from community television?
Oh, yes. No, I already projected that.
Oh, I didn't
Yes,
hear you
yes.
say that.
John Laird will be the winner in the 27th Assembly District based on exit polls that I took at my polling booth. Okay.
But, you know, in southern Santa Clara County, they have butterfly ballots, so...
Pregnant chat.
Yeah. We may be here a while.
We'll have Catherine Harris come and count those
yeah.
for you.
You know, hopefully she's losing. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Let's head back to Joel Domhoff with our first results of the evening.
All right, Jeff, thank you very much. And folks, you know it's early here, so don't take these numbers to heart just yet. We will give you an early indication of what's going on. As we told you 20 minutes ago, the big race would be Mark and Marty. That's Mark Premack and Marty Wormhout
To the
for the
Bahamas.
3rd District County Supervisor position. And as you see here, Mark Premack has jumped out to an early lead. He's got just under 60% of the votes, while Marty has just under 40. But again, of course, as I said, it's early. Shifting our focus now to the Santa Cruz City Council race, and no surprise at the top, it's Cynthia Mathews and Mike Rotkin who have jumped out to a lead here early. But there is a surprise in the 3rd spot. Aldo Giacchino is seeking to pull the upset off, really, as Tim Fitzmaurice is the other member of that trio who has city council experience. But Aldo Giacchino, as you see there, with just under 15% of the votes, has about a 4.5% lead on Tim Fitzmaurice here early on. Next, we'll go to those measures we told you about. That would be Measure P and Measure Q. Of course, Measure P is a hotly contested issue here for the city of Santa Cruz. This would repeal the utility tax, and as you see there, 59% of you thus far have said no to that. So it looks like those of you who want to keep jobs for firemen, policemen, etc., keep schools open and after-school programs, Harvey West, all that stuff, it's happening for you early. Measure Q now, the hotel tax. That one, the Measure Q yes vote is leading by a 55-45% count early on. As you see there, we're jumping around, but we apologize. And now we're going to go to the propositions. Prop 47, as we got ahead of ourselves. Prop 47 is the school funding initiative. That would fund kindergarten through college. And as you see here, actually you can't see here, but I'll tell you, the yes vote has a 54-46 lead on the no there. Again, that's Prop 47 for school funding. And Prop 49, the after-school program, that's Arnold Schwarzenegger's bill, as we told you. Yes leads 53-47, and again, that's early on in that race. Shifting now to the state assembly race for the 27th district, you heard our own Jeff Dunn tell you that John Laird and Sam Farr both would be considered locks in gambling parlance, and certainly you see there John Laird with 56% of the vote, a big lead thus far on the Republican challenger, Chuck Carter. And as you look now here at the Sam Farr screen, as expected, Mr. Farr has jumped ahead 68%, Clint Engler in second with 28%, and the Santa Cruz Green Party candidate, Ray Glock Grunick, with just under 3% there. Finally, we'll look at these two races. Lieutenant Governor, of course, that's Santa Cruz's Bruce McPherson against the incumbent Cruz Bustamante. And as you see here, McPherson has jumped out to the early lead, 53% for him, just under 41% for the incumbent, so an early lead for Bruce. And finally, the governor's race, Gray Davis against Bill Simon. Davis, of course, the incumbent. And you see there Simon seeking to unseat Mr. Davis. He has just under 57% of the vote. Davis just under 37%. We'll be back with some more race updates in 20 minutes, but now we're going to go back to Geoffrey Dunn with another political guest and more analysis. Jeff.
Thank you, Joel. We're back here with the mayor of Santa Cruz, Christopher Crone. Chris, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
What I was thinking intermission there was that 4 years ago tonight, you and I were together, approximately 4 years ago tonight.
Do we have the kids up here?
No, it was when you were elected.
Okay.
And we were over at the SEIU headquarters.
Cell phone.
And it was a pretty amazing night. You and your two other amigos swept to victory, and now 4 years later, both you and Keith Sugar decided not to run. Just curious, what are you reflecting on tonight? You've been mayor now for a year. You'll be it for a couple more weeks. What are your reflections looking back on those 4 years?
Well, without looking necessarily back, sort of looking tonight and ahead, there's been a lot of energy went into to Marty Wormhouse, for example, and I'd really like to see her win and continue, I think, a real progressive legacy here in Santa Cruz. There's a couple ballot initiatives, P and Q, that a lot of people are watching. There's a city council race, which, you know, maybe this will take me back to your question.
Yeah.
Which, you know, you have 12 candidates, but I think serious candidates, whatever that means, and some people react sort of, what do you mean serious, you know? I think there's about 4.5 serious candidates.
I won't ask you who the half is.
And, you know, I think the three, you know, Fitzmaurice, Rotkin, and Mathews, you know, will win.
3 former mayors.
Right, and I think that's precisely the reason. I think there's a popularity there, there's a name recognition. I think it's really tough to beat an incumbent, you know, of course, or a past incumbent who got termed out and then came back. I think the past 4 years, I feel really good about Santa Cruz, and there's some things that I, you know, feel like I could have done better, but I think in the area of youth, for example, I worked with you on the teen center, the skate park. There's a youth advisory commission. I think, you know, all along, if somebody walks along the river levee corridor today, they'll see a much different river levee corridor than they did 4 years ago even. And I think Sam Farr you had on before, and he's a big part of that as well, bringing money from Washington to Santa Cruz. And we, of course, matched that, but nowhere near the kind of money we're getting from Washington. You know, I think that we're talking about campaigns right now. Campaign finance reform is something that this council focused on, and we've revamped it, actually. And if folks out there who are listening received a little election mailer that I was very proud of. I was on a committee with 2 other council members, Councilmember Fitzmaurice and Vice Mayor Reilly, and Robert Cohen, who has been doggedly on this for several years. And we worked on revamping it, and I think we put out a great publication this year that made me proud of Santa Cruz. I wasn't in it, and I just looking at it and the way it was presented to folks in Santa Cruz, I was extremely proud. So
it was a real page turner. No, it was. I want to say that. I read it from page to page, and there was a great historical piece segment in the middle of it that I thoroughly enjoyed. And all this stuff was stuff that didn't exist 4 years ago.
Yeah, and we've got a long way to go. There's, you know, the Supreme Court has ruled that free speech, that money is free speech, and I think the only way that we can get campaign finance reform, real campaign finance reform, is from the grassroots, and it's not going to come from Washington. And I think we have to do it locally, and we have voluntary limits. And I appreciate most of the candidates in this race have been really pretty assiduously following those campaign spending limits. You know, people spent $44,000. I think you probably know these figures better than I do in past elections, and we're limiting it right now to $19,500. Some of the candidates get $5,000 more because they had to defend themselves in a court case. But that's another story.
That is another story, but it's very relative to tonight. One of the ironies is you mentioned 4+ candidates, really serious candidates. In the early absentee vote, Aldo Giacchino is in 3rd place ahead of Tim Fitzmaurice, former mayor. I don't know if that will hold, and as the UC precincts come in, I suspect it will change. You know, I think really Santa Cruz City politics have gotten to be about narrowing our choices, at least in this election, as opposed to the last couple of years.
Well, I think it's kind of interesting that Mr. Giacchino took on 2 candidates who were running but weren't in office, rather than taking on sort of the city council, which is pretty traditional. When you're running for office, you take on, and Tim Fitzmaurice, I thought maybe he should have taken on a little more. I think he got an early rise out of that. His name instantly became known around Santa Cruz. Of course, everybody wanted to know who he was. but I don't feel like maybe he followed up. He has spent some money, and maybe he's reached the voters that he thinks he needs to reach to win. So we'll be watching that race tonight. And you think it's probably maybe between Tim Fitzmaurice and Aldo Giacchino, or do you think that...
For the third spot? I think that's probably likely it, especially now that we're seeing some early absentee ballots and also based on precinct walks.
So he's been working a little bit.
Yeah.
One of the things that we may be seeing, and you can't say yet because it's too early to watch the 3rd supervisorial district, but you heard some of it in the letters to the editor, sort of a let's get the circus out of the way and let's get down to brass tacks and fix some things attitude on the part of some of the voters, that there's sort of a impatience with too much drama in the council meetings with protests and things bogging down, and the vote on the Peace Park that seemed to snowball out of control with public opinion in the sign, and those things sort of obscuring some of the real work you guys are doing. Do you think that with these new people on that will change somewhat and people will try to push all that aside and get down to some real problem solving?
You know, from my perspective, there's a lot of things that happen during a campaign that then completely cease, and hopefully we live in a civil society, people mend fences quickly. It usually happens pretty quickly. So a lot of things get said as the campaign heats up. You know, in reality, very little time, I think, if you go back to the minutes and go back to the actual meetings, was spent talking about a Peace Park or talking about the sign, and that was actually started at council before even I got on the council more than 4 years ago. I think the council does spend a lot of time, and if you go, the minutes will bear me out. This man sitting right here, we worked on affordable housing issues together. This is an interesting thing because I think we've created more affordable housing than many councils in the past, and I think possibly there'll be some sort of backlash to that. You know, that wow, once they see the Schaefer Road project go up, and once they see downtown go up, and there's a bunch of SRO, single room occupancies going up, there's going to be a lot more housing in Santa Cruz. Is that going to stem, you know, is it going to bring prices down? I don't know. You know, I think that we live in a desirable place. I mean, what weather we've been having. I just keep saying that. Like, thank you. This is so beautiful every day.
This is a New Yorker speaking right now. It's November.
Yeah, it's November, and it's beautiful. So you're always going to attract people here in Santa Cruz. And so there's that tension. And then water is the great growth inhibitor, I believe. And so now you have some desal issues. People are talking about desalinization plants. Where is it going to go? That's going to be another big issue that's going to come up, and people are going to have to take that on. The 3rd district issue, I'd have to reflect on the person who's running, the two folks who are running. One has a record, and the other one, you know, I have not yet seen his record. I don't know what his record is on the city council, and he's moving on. And I was a little bit, you know, concerned about that from the get-go.
So you were a stepping stone. You may be.
Yeah, right. And I think maybe he could have stayed on for 4 years and then, you know, run in 4 more years from now.
Let me ask you one more question about housing. San Luis Obispo was told, I guess by the federal government, they had to build 18,000 units, and we were told 6 or 8, something like that. And they're fighting it. They're trying to limit the number, and I assume we are too.
Yeah.
But where does that end? I mean, what kind of bargaining do we have, and what numbers are we talking about this next couple of years?
It's through the Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments. It's called AMBAG, and everybody, a lot of folks don't know this, there's a whole housing plan by the state, and you're told to take a certain amount of units. It doesn't mean you have to build those units. It just says that you accept those units if you want housing money to help you build affordable units, right, and if the government wants help from the state. Some cities have rejected that help and haven't received that money. The county, for example, from what I read, evidently lost out on some of those grants from the state. That has been talked about during this particular election. We are fighting right now with other Monterey Bay Area cities. Well, Monterey and Santa Cruz counties are fighting over what our numbers actually should be. Are we going to file a lawsuit? That's all being looked at right now. Just like you just said, San Luis Obispo. That's major, the numbers that I saw concerning them.
You know, you and I were at the opening of the Pacific Rim Film Festival the other night at the Del Mar Theater. It was a great night, and the Pacific Rim Festival has come back, and there have been a number of other festivals at the Del Mar since it opened this past spring. Previous councils had tried to deal with the Del Mar to obtain it as an arts facility, and you know, very quietly, you and Keith Sugar and a couple other council members worked to make that happen. make it happen, there was this sort of unique private-public coming together and process. Do you see that as models for other types of projects in the city? The city certainly doesn't have enough financing to do a lot of capital investment. But are there other opportunities out there that you see the city and the private sector might join to come together for a public good?
You know, thank you for saying that, because I think that is a real bright spot on Pacific Avenue right now. I think Pacific Avenue gets talked about in a way that, you know, honestly, I believe the city's overwhelmed resource-wise. What the resources we need with what's going on at Pacific Avenue and the numbers of people who are actually coming to our downtown. And I do think we have to, you know, deal with that. And I think a lot of us were sorry to see this tax repeal, you know, this utility tax repeal on the ballot, when we really need a revenue-raising ballot initiative to raise about $8 million for a whole bunch of stuff people are asking us for, including downtown, including more police protection, including street tree program, including fixing sidewalks. But with respect to the Del Mar, I think that was a fabulous enhancement to Fifth Avenue. You go out there, you see that billboard, and it's bright, and it brings people to it. It's a magnet, and it's what we hoped for. And I think the Nickelodeon, from what I hear, you know, knock on wood, the business seems to be working right now. We're in an economic downturn, and people go to movies, evidently, during those downturns. So I think it'll with regards to your question, I could see a lot of different partnerships with respect to housing issues. Some people are freaking out a little bit about the river corridor, the numbers of units that are being talked about along our river, which I think is a beautiful place for housing and has a lot of potential. I think we have to look at the environmental consequences as well as how many units actually can go in there. But I see some room there for public-private partnerships.
John?
I have a question for all of you, too. So after John, I want to ask you a question, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let me think here. I've seen you do this. Whereas you're mayor, and whereas you are through in public office here real shortly, and whereas you will need to work, what are you going to do?
Well, that's a good question, John. And I've had a lot of thoughts. I have a lot of things to do. I have a lot of catching up to do. I think the first thing I'm going to do is catch up with my family. And I think, I know it's been real tough on them. It's interesting. I see it in my 7-year-old who doesn't want to be in the spotlight at all because she's seen that from me. Whereas my 2-year-old is like right out there, right, you know, she hasn't gotten that sense yet in what's going on. But the first one is very shy. So I'm going to spend a good deal of time with them. I've got a stack of books about 6 feet high that I want to read, that I've been kind of saving. And beyond that, I'm looking. I'm going to, you know, I think go back to teaching, and I'm real interested in teaching and academic work. I kind of envy this guy over here who's doing it. You know, he's making films. He's got a gig at the university.
He's busy.
Yeah, he's more than busy, and he's got a wonderful family.
All right. Well, good. Now you have a question.
What's up? Why do you think, you know, just from you've all been covering politics a lot in Santa Cruz, or at least been watching it as a watcher, and hopefully you'll give me your best shot here, but why were there only 3 candidates, maybe 4, running for city council in Santa Cruz this time out of 12? Why aren't more people running for city council who have a really good track record? I could name several right now off the top of my head who should be running and aren't.
Well, I have an answer for that, and since we only have a minute left, let me give you a quick answer.
You get 20 seconds in.
All right.
New host.
She gets the whole next hour, so I'm running off to, with you. I think that beginning in the year, it was felt that there would be as many as 7 ex-mayors running for the 3 council seats. And I think a lot of people decided that that was going to be too tough a field to run in for them to enter. Mm-hmm. And, you know, once it sort of narrowed down and a couple of the other ex-mayors realized that they weren't going to run, it was a little too late for people to get a candidacy going. So I think that was probably the real reason.
It's also just a terrible job. I mean, you have to go to meetings with all of these wackos and listen to all of the nut stuff that comes up, and you have to do that every week, and you have to take the heat in the papers. And I don't think it's a desirable job. I mean, I think you guys are heroes that do it. You have to work all the time. It's not like, okay, the meeting's over, I'm through. You're working 24 hours a day. Whenever you're outside of your house, you're the mayor of Santa Cruz or you're a city council member and people come up to you and want, I could never do that. I just think that would be, I think it's a very difficult job, and thank you for taking it on.
Thank you.
And thank you for being here tonight. That wraps up our segment. We're heading back to Joel with the local results. Joel Domhoff.
All right, Jeff, thank you very much, and we thank the Mayor, Christopher Crone, for joining us as well. We're going to let you know who is going to try and join the City Council, the new City Council, in just a moment for those of you just tuning in. But first, the big race, the race that we consider the number one because of the media scrutiny, the intensity of this battle, is the 3rd District County Supervisor race. And as you see here, it's still early, folks. Mark versus Marty. Mark Premack with the early lead, just under 60%. Marty Wormhout, the incumbent, just under 40%. And as you see, that's just absentee ballots there, so we'll keep an eye on that race for you. We're not going to engage in any Dewey defeats Truman stuff here. If you want to see that stuff, you'll have to turn the channel. We won't do it. Next, it's the Santa Cruz City Council race, and as we told you before, Cynthia Mathews and Mike Rotkin, as expected, have taken a lead. But the upset thus far, and it is early, is Aldo Giacchino grabbing the 3rd spot over Tim Fitzmaurice. You see some of the other names there. Greg Lopez with just under 8%. Karen Wobleski right there as well at the 8% mark. David Asalius just over 6%. Connie Thomaser just under 6%. Phil Bear, Steve Argue, Thomas Levitt, and Jeremy McMillan rounding out that race. Next, we're going to take a look at the Watsonville City Council. Now, that's got a couple different districts. First, it's District 3, 1 seat open here. And as you see there, it's Antonio Ribas with 61%, Ron Swank with just under 39%. And again, it's early there, but it appears as if Ribas has a nice early lead. And over in District 4, 1 seat open, it's actually Ana Vintera Fares has already locked that one up, so we should, if we could, please scroll down to District 7, where there's 1 spot open. And as you see there now, it's Dale Skillicorn with 72% and Arcadio Viveros with just under 28% in that race. Shifting cities now, it's Capitola City Council time, 3 seats open. As you see there, Bob Begun with 27%, Bruce Arthur with 26%, Stephanie Harlan, 23, and Dennis Norton, 22. So a very close battle there early on for the city of Capitola. As I told you, there's 3 seats available there. Next up, the Santa Cruz City School Board race. There are a couple different races going on. First, Area 1. 2 seats are open, and you see there are 3 vying for those 2 spots. Judy Cook with just under 40%, Tim Willis with 34% roughly, and Jim Logsdon just over 26%. So it appears that race will be close throughout the evening. And as we scroll our way down, Area 2, 1 seat open in this race, and it's Chris Brozda with 28%, Mike Ruth with 72%. So you see there Ruth with a nice early lead. And now we'll work our way down to Area 3, 1 seat open here as well. As we told you, Community TV's own CeCe Pinero in this race. Early returns have John Wasserberger with just over 40%, CeCe with 26, Michael Besky just under 21, and Luis Lynch with just over 12%. Moving now to San Lorenzo Valley, the school board race there in Area 1, 1 seat available. And it's Stephen Kraus with just under 52%, Bob Foltz with just under 48% in that race. And we're going to scroll our way now down to Ed Bischoff and see if I can get this right. Linda Kernitsky, they're in a close battle there. As you see, Ed Bischoff with just over 51%, Linda just under 49. And finally, up in the Scotts Valley area, Measure R is our next area of focus. Again, this is their utility tax for that city. And the yes with an overwhelming lead early, 74% to just under 26% for the no contingent. And then we'll work our way southward to the city of Watsonville, where that Measure S is our focus this evening. That's the water measure. As you see there, the yes with a slight lead, 52% to 47%. And remember, no means yes to fluoride. So we'll keep our eye on that race as well as many others. But now we're going to go over to our host for the 9 o'clock hour. That'll be Rachel Goodman. She'll have more political analysis and interviews. Rachel, take it away.
Hi, and welcome back to Community Television. In 2002 coverage for the Santa Cruz area, we tuned into full coverage till 11 o'clock and perhaps beyond. We've just heard some preliminary results. We'll be giving you results every 20 minutes throughout the evening, and we have some wonderful guests to join us that have been part of this whole political campaign. And one of those is Mark Premack. He's with me. He's a candidate for 3rd District Supervisor's position, and it's been probably one of the most contentious and high-profile races we've had in quite some time. I'm also joined by host John Sandidge. Thanks for being here. I guess I'll start out with the headline news that was in the Sentinel this morning. Late disclosure of a very large contribution from out of the state and from out of the area, several of them. $25,000 to your campaign got revealed. Kind of a precedent-breaking move for this small of a race that people outside of our area would want to have a hand in it. And I think that took several people aback, that people have an interest in what goes on here to that degree that they're willing to spend big bucks to sway an election at the last minute.
Well, Rachel, it is very disturbing for me to hear the question of $25,000 contributed to my campaign, when the truth is anything but that. I have a campaign that I've been running for near on a year now. It's a grassroots campaign. We've had over 600 people in this community contribute to that campaign. There's an outside committee that I only found out about yesterday when I was approached by the news media that raised this money that you talked about. These are people that, when I finally got the list yesterday of who they were, people that I have absolutely nothing to do with, people I do not know, people who have not participated in my campaign at all. When I first heard about it, the day before an election, that suddenly this whole thing was revealed, my first suspicion was that this was another dirty trick against my campaign. I mean, why would anybody helping me reveal all this money the day before an election? So I was just as dismayed as I think everybody else was to learn that this was going on, because we have a campaign that has run a very clean and high-integrity campaign for close to a year now. And we have done nothing but positive mailers and put out a positive message despite the attacks that we've come under. So I was as curious as anybody else as to who these people were. And when it was revealed to me the names of the people and what their interests were, and this was from a mailer from the Rural Bonnie Doon Association, it seemed to me that there were two things that these people had in common. One, they had absolutely no connection with me. I don't know them. I've never had any dealings with them. And two, they all seemed to have anger towards my opponent, Marty Wormhout. So maybe it's unprecedented that any group of people would be this angry with an incumbent, but to me it doesn't reflect on my campaign, because my campaign has been a very honest campaign.
But it did help you do some major media buys at the last minute?
No, it didn't help me do anything, because...
Do you think it may have hurt you more than help you?
Well, think about this. We have raised a tremendous amount of money on our own, mostly small contributions, in the last 6 months primarily. We met the budget we had for all the things that we wanted to do. We produced a small television ad that we ran on cable television. We were able to finance some full-page ads in various newspapers. And what this effort has done is basically a kind of redundant effort beyond our campaign that's done other television ads that ran on KSBW. We couldn't afford KSBW. We had a $3,000 budget for AT&T, and they did additional ads in the Sentinel to the point where I thought that the Sentinel looked a little bit top-heavy with the ads for me. There's another group that also independently came up with ads where they promoted city council members, city council candidates rather, Karen Wableski and Mike Rotkin and Al Giancina and myself. This is not something that my campaign coordinated either. These are not candidates that I necessarily endorsed or promoted or even voted for.
So let's get down to the substance of your campaign and what really distinguished you from your opponent and what maybe, depending what's going on here, it's very early to tell, but right now you have a 60% to Marty's 40% approximately. With very early absentee mostly being counted, and that could change drastically, and it's expected to be close. But given that, a lot of your supporters said that what's been going on is growth management by default, that by not widening roads and by opposing various improvements that people were preventing growth, and that was a method being purported by your opponent. And you came in saying that's not the way to plan, that we need to plan for growth and wisely plan. And of course, your opponent came back and said, but that is inviting growth. So you have this real focus on the growth issue. I've been told recently that California is going to have 600,000 new people a year. Where are we going to put all these people, and how in the world can we wisely plan for that kind of an influx if we don't want to turn out like Santa Maria or something like that?
Let's look at history. Back in 1970, Governor Pat Brown advised the various counties of the state of California to brace itself for doubling the population by the year 1990. And some counties attempted to do that, to plan for it. Other counties said, no way, we're not prepared to accept that. So what's the net result? The net result in Santa Cruz is that we've had the growth in population. I don't think anybody can deny that. It's there in our census. We have grown in population, but we have not done anything to accommodate that growth. And that's why we have the housing crisis we have. That's why we have the water crisis we have. That's why we have the traffic crisis. And I think one of the biggest rifts between the two candidates in this is that I've acknowledged that this crisis exists, and my opponent has said steadfastly that everything is really okay.
Let me just say to our viewers that Marty Wormhat was invited. I think she did decline to come on. We would have really liked to hear from her this evening, and it's a great loss to have not the other side represented this evening. I'm disappointed that didn't happen. John, you want to chime in here?
Well, I've had 3 evenings with Mark and Marty, and I've asked them pretty much every question that I could think of over that period of time. But if you are victorious in this, or probably the way you would put it is when I'm victorious in this, how will you start? I mean, you've had a year on the city council, is pretty much 2 years, and you're moving into a whole new body, how do you start? Where do you begin?
Well, I'm not unfamiliar with the county. I've been involved with as an architect with the county planning department, which I think is one of the most troublesome aspects of county government right now, and the majority of supervisors acknowledge that. So, and I've had conversations with all of the supervisors, the people in their various seats sitting today. And we're in agreement on many of the issues. So I don't see joining the Board of Supervisors in January as being anywhere similar to the situation I found myself in when I was elected to the City Council, where I really was an outsider, an independent, a person who had been shunned by the City Council in not being reappointed to the zoning board that I'd served on for 11 years, and having to run against the very people who had voted me off the zoning board. So I'll be starting out on a much better foot with the Board of Supervisors, because we are on the same page in terms of wanting to deal with many of the issues in the county. But I also think that if you look at anybody who has actually watched City Council meetings and observed the dynamic of the City Council, will find that I am a person who works really hard to work on consensus, to listen to all sides of an issue before making up my mind. And I think that will only put me in good stead on the Board of Supervisors. And I think that despite whatever propaganda there is, if you look at the record of voting on the City Council in the last 2 years, there have been many unanimous votes, and there have been many votes that have been where I have found myself on the winning side of a 5-2 vote, or the winning side of a 4-3 vote. And if you look at the behavior of city council members in the last 2 years, you'll find that there is no block, as there has been in the past, 4-3 contentious blocks, that the voting pattern changes with each issue, as it should, when people are open-minded, when people are thinking for themselves. And I look at the Board of Supervisors and I see incumbents there who do think for themselves, and I feel that we'll get along famously.
We have about 4 minutes left before we get to hear our next set of results, which I'm sure you're watching very closely tonight, as are we all. I just want to follow up with another question about the rural part of our county, since I live there in the north part of Santa Cruz County. It's been a very hotly protected area that people feel very strongly that the general plan, the way it's zoned rural, is a good thing, and that building in the cities and filling them in, but leaving our outside areas rural is a desirable thing. And there have been fears that some of the people wanting to get their way into our county want to build monster homes like they do in San Mateo County. That's been raised a couple of times in this campaign. What kind of reassurances have you given the residents of the North Coast that that won't happen to them too now?
Well, the program of building in our cities, in our urban cores, and along transportation corridors, of building higher density to avoid suburban sprawl is a program that I have been advocating for 20 years in Santa Cruz. This is not something I'm new to. This is something I've been fighting for years. And I'm having been involved in the early conception of the green belt around Santa Cruz, the very purpose of a green belt is to limit suburban sprawl and allow a city to grow internally in density rather than spreading out. So there's absolutely no conflict between the desire of people on the North Coast to remain rural, as you say, or low density, and my desire to see the North Coast remain primarily open space and agriculture. And I think that that's my concern right now, and one of the biggest issues for me coming into office is the loss of agriculture on the North Coast, because that is incredibly threatened right now. There are on Coast Area's land 700 acres arable right now, and next year at most 100 will be farmed because the farmers are having their water shut off because there was no planning for how to sustain farming once this purchase of North Coast land took place. So the North Coast is still threatened, and we have to be very careful about how we plan. But in my mind, there is no place for new development on the North Coast. That's not what the North Coast is for.
Well, am I happy to hear that? Because
we have a few more minutes. So
okay.
Do you have one more?
Yeah, well, I'd sort of like to follow up on that, because in one of the many articles I've been reading over the last few weeks, there was talk of somebody building a monster house on the beach side of Highway 1. And when those kind of things come up, obviously that you're opposed to them, but how do you justify that with property rights? If somebody owns the property and it's a buildable piece of property, how do you stop them from building a monster house?
Well, the way you stop people is that you make sure as a community that you have the planning in place and the ordinances in place that define what the desires of the community are. The problem that we have is that we have ordinances that allow these things to happen, and then we have to fight rearguard actions. So I'm an advocate of planning before these things come up, so that we can be very frank and straightforward with people when they come in the door. No, this is not allowed in our ordinances. And we tend to be very nebulous with people now, and they go through all this trouble to fill out these applications. And then 2 years down the road, we tell them no, and they're angry, and they form committees, outside committees that try to unseat incumbents, and we find ourselves in this kind of mess that we were in the last couple of days.
Well, Mark Premack, I want to thank you for coming in on a pretty busy night from you, I'm sure. I hope you'll continue to watch election results here on Community TV. And thank you so much for coming.
Nice to talk to you.
And we're going to go now to Joel Domhoff with more results here on Community Television.
All right, Rachel, thank you very much. And folks, if you're just joining us, we have made an editorial decision here at Community TV to focus on the Mark Premack, Marty Wormhout race. That will lead every update throughout the evening. As you see here, it's still early, but Mark Premack, as we've told you before, just under 60% of the vote, while Marty Wormhout just under 40% of the vote. This is still absentee time, only 046 precincts reporting, but it's early, so we'll keep you posted. Next up will be the Santa Cruz City Council race. We've told you throughout the evening that we expect Cynthia Mathews and Mike Rotkin to win. However, the other favorite, Tim Fitzmaurice, thus far it's early, but Aldo Giacchino has gotten 14.6% of the vote, so he has about a 4.5% lead on Tim Fitzmaurice here early on in that race. Next up, we're going to shift our focus to the utility tax measure. That would be Measure P for Santa Cruz. And as you see there, the no vote is just under 59%, while the yes vote has about 41%. And also a big measure here in the city of Santa Cruz, it's Measure Q. That would be the hotel tax. And as you see there, the yes vote just under 55%, the no just over 45%. Next up, two big propositions that we're focusing on. Prop 47, school funding kindergarten through college. You don't see the numbers there, but I'll tell them to you here. Yes is just under 58%, no just over 42%, so the yes vote appears to be winning out here early on. And Prop 49, the after-school program, that one's real close, folks. 50.5% for the yes, 49.5% for the no, so clearly a close race there. Next up, the John Laird and Sam Farr numbers that we've told you we expect these two to advance easily. John Laird will be first up, the State Assembly race, 27th District. Actually, we're going to show the Sam Farr numbers first. Sam has just over 68% of the vote. Clint Engler, his closest contender, at just under 28%. Now we'll go to John Laird's numbers, and that, of course, is the 27th District. This is a race to replace Fred Keeley. Big shoes to fill. John Laird is the man to do it, according to you voters. He has just over 55% of the vote. Chuck Carter just over 40%. Lieutenant governor race now is our next focus. Bruce McPherson, Santa Cruz native, looking to unseat Cruz Bustamante. And you see here, folks, it can't get much closer than that. A very few vote difference there, percentage-wise minuscule as well. So we expect that race to go throughout the night, may not be decided for a day or two afterwards. Governor's race, Gray Davis now against Bill Simon. That's the next chart we'll show you. And as you see, Davis has made a bit of a comeback since the first returns we showed you. Simon now with 47%, Davis just under 45%. Lastly now, we're going to update the Soquel Creek Water District numbers and the San Lorenzo Valley Water Board. First up, it'll be the Soquel Creek Water District. 3 seats are open here. You see Bruce Jaffe with just over 19%. Jack Beebe right there as well with 19%. Dan Krieg with 17%. Nancy Walls right there with 15%. As we told you, 3 of those 9 will advance. And finally, the San Lorenzo Valley Water Board numbers. 3 seats open here. 5 people vying for those 3 seats. And you see here Terry Vieira with the early lead, just under 24%. James Raposa and Larry Prather are both right there as well, and Gordy Stewart and Janet Laidlaw with just over 14% of the vote there early on. That's it for this update. We'll be back in 20 minutes with some fresh set of numbers, but now we're going to go back to your 9 o'clock host, none other than Rachel Goodman, with more analysis. Rachel.
Thank you, Joel, for those results. We'll be watching again in 20 minutes to hear how things have changed or moved, and I'm sure you all will want to stay tuned to find out more about what's going on. I'm Rachel Ann Goodman. I'm joined here by Emily Reilly, City Council person and ongoing from around the Mission Street area, and John Sandidge, my co-host. Thank you for being here tonight. We heard earlier from Christopher Crone, who was talking about his outgoing view of the City Council and maybe what lies ahead for this next round of issues, things that you have to deal with. You've made some big accomplishments with the widening of Mission Street. There's been a lot of things that he listed that really people can be proud of. Now that we may be in a sort of economically shaky time with it trickling all the way down to the local level, what are some of the things you hope to work on that might get us around the worst of it?
Well, you put it really well. You know, I think that I was thinking today, I do believe P is going to be defeated tonight. And we're going to be so excited. P is defeated, yes. And then we're going to go, oh, we still don't have any money.
We still need $8 million.
No, what? I think it's going to be a real struggle. I do. But it's kind of like, when I was a kid, one time there was a strike that lasted for a long time. And at the beginning of the strike, we were told, we're striking for the future. This is going to be, we're in it for the long haul. It's going to be okay. We're not going to lose the house. We're going to have food. But maybe we won't have dessert every night, And then after a couple of weeks, we weren't having much dessert, although my mother always was able to bake something, And then, and then you get to the point where there's no meat in the soup, right? Well, I don't know if we're going to get to the point next year where there's no meat in the soup, but it's going to be tough. And I think what you learn when you have to do that is that you don't have the luxury of being petty about things, right? And so I think that we're going to be pulling together and working hard on things, and there are things that you can do for free, just like you do when you're broke, You look for ways to do things for free, and I think that's what we're going to do. I think we won't be building any big public works projects probably, but you can drive the speed limit for free. And if everybody in the city drove the speed limit, imagine how that would improve the quality of life in our neighborhood. So, I think it's going to be fun. I think we're going to have a good time. I think it's going to be tough, and we're going to work hard. But,
We'll have to tighten our belts and maybe go without a few desserts. How do you decide what's dessert and what's the main course, though?
Well, I think that we have to make decisions based on the values of our community. And I think that in order to do that, it's really important that the City Council listen to what the community says it wants. I think that the defeat of Measure P, she said, shows that that this community really values the services that are provided by the city, all the Parks and Rec programs, all the senior programs, the social service programs, the sidewalk maintenance, the Heritage Tree Fund that we fund to help save trees. All of those things are important to this community. They've told us that over and over and over again. So I think that when the moment comes to make the decision, for me, I remember asking Fred Keeley when I went on to the Metro Transit Board if he had any advice, and he said, try to remember the guy standing on the corner watching the bus go by. So that's what it's really about. It's really easy sometimes to get into these conversations that are very rhetorical and very intellectual and all this. But basically, I think we need to stop and say, what values are important to this community? Does this decision serve that value or not? And try to place our priorities based on that.
Well, given it looks like you may have a couple seasoned veterans coming back onto the council who have been through the wars, and various budget crunches in the past, you may have a lot of experience, to bear on this. One of the things that seems to have been raised in the past couple of years is the downtown. How do we make it as popular as it is, but safer and a happier place for everyone? And I know that Christopher Crumb was mentioning more police, but there's probably other ideas that you have, too.
I think there are things that we could do. Weekend before last, I was part of the graffiti cleanup downtown, and in an hour and a half, we got rid of so much graffiti. I was amazed at how quickly we were able to. My little square of fence was probably 6 feet by 6 feet, maybe.
So there's clean pallets out there now.
Yes, exactly. But you have, you just have to stay on top of it and keep doing it. But I think the two biggest things that turn people off on downtown is feeling intimidated because of antisocial behavior, and when it's dirty, people look around and think this is a downtown that doesn't respect itself. And I think that if we get the community together, and if we begin to take a little bit more responsibility and control of things, we'll feel better, because we'll feel like we're taking action. So if we get out there and sweep the streets and paint the graffiti and drive at the speed limit so that there's no racing cut-through traffic in our neighborhoods, I think people are going to feel a lot better about downtown and about the community, and none of that costs very much.
I think it's the ordinances that make the headlines and drive everyone nuts.
Yeah.
Because how do you legislate proper social behavior? And there's been a lot of debate about, is it too oppressive? Is it not oppressive enough? And can you do something about it? And I'm sure that those are some of the hardest decisions you all have to make.
Yeah, they are. Because in a way, when we do get to the point where we have to legislate something like that, it's very clumsy. That's not the way to do it. We all know that, And, as my mom says, if it weren't for idiots, we wouldn't have any laws at all. So, I don't know. But Tim read a couple lines from a poem the night we were talking about the ordinances. And it started out, if you can't love, love. If you can't love, at least respect. We need respect. If not respect, then we need manners. And if not manners, then we need laws. And that's where we got on the mall last year, And it was really, really too bad.
But it really hasn't changed that much. I mean, the laws didn't really change much. As far as I can see, I guess there's places where a bunch of people don't hang out now that used to, but they're hanging out somewhere. They're still on the mall someplace.
Yeah.
Somebody else is taking. So we're just moving the problem around. And like you say, it's really hard to legislate that stuff. And we have a pretty open city. We welcome people to come in and let them be themselves, and it's part of the charm of the city. But it still does affect the businesses downtown, I would imagine. And
absolutely.
So is there, how do we move forward?
Well, one of the best things that came out of that whole experience for me was that the community became engaged. People were so adamant on whatever side of the issue they were on that we began to talk about it. And so now the musicians are talking to other musicians about, you know what, the way they're trying to do it is really awfully awkward. Isn't there a better way we can do this? So I think if we can keep that level of engagement up, engagement, is that a word? I guess it is.
Yeah.
and get people to continue talking about ways to figure out that would make it better for them, then I think we really will be able to change things. And it hasn't gelled yet, but I think it's still going that way because people are continuing to talk about it.
We had Tom Noddy on here one night talking about that situation right here. And he had actually put together a coalition of musicians in years past when there were other problems and got this sort of set of rules to follow. Musicians' guidelines. And it worked. Are we looking at that kind of a thing to do again?
Yeah, we are. Tom's guidelines are wonderful.
Yeah.
And I think, though, that it's important that the younger musicians and the people who are playing on the mall a lot now are involved in crafting the new set of guidelines. And I think that, I have lots of ideas about how I would like to see that go forward. I'd like some kind of downtown guild, buskers guild or something that the musicians put together themselves, decided what guidelines they were going to follow, and then if they did, and one on my list would be cleaning up your own little space after you were finished playing. But if that happened, then maybe in the city we could figure out some perks for the people who agreed to follow the guidelines as well. Some of those might be exemptions to some of the ordinances, but there might be other things, a paid space where people could play once a month, that the city, assuming we ever have any money again, would be able to pay people to play in the future. Ed Porter has some really terrific ideas about it. He's working hard on it, and he and I are having a lot of conversations about it, but trying not to really solidify things, because I think the only way it's going to work is if it comes from the community. So.
There is the issue of policing, and I know in a time of budget cuts, it's very difficult to attract at the level of salary to live here, police, and keep them. And it's the kind of policing that's some of the hardest because it's social policing. You're trying to get to know the community enough to know who's just harmless, crazy, and who's going to be dangerous to someone. And so that requires a long-term presence here. What are your ideas about police and walking that line between being a presence downtown and being a kind of a oppressive military force downtown?
It really is difficult. They have such a hard job. I know I've been on 4 ride-alongs so far, and every time at some point during the evening, the police officer will get out of the car and say to me, "Stay in the car," like I would, like I would get out.
Oh, I want to help.
But I have that luxury, I get to stay in the car. He doesn't get to stay in the car. And they are, I think that, of course, money is important, and of course it's expensive to live here. But one of the things that we can do for our police, do a better job for our police than we're doing now, is really support them and appreciate them. And again, I think if the community, if all of us residents became more involved in walking on the levee to activate it, in getting together groups of people who helped a little bit with some of the community policing, I think then the police would feel more appreciated, which would energize them a little bit and give them maybe that extra boost to help solve some of the problems.
Well, that's been a solution in residential neighborhoods, the neighborhood watch. And it seems like a downtown watch might be a kind of thing people would get behind. So that's a really good idea.
Some of the people at El Centro are ready to do that. They are ready to take back the streets.
Yeah. Well, the problem that we have, it's not local people that are necessarily the problem. We have a lot of people who pass through town. They come through, they're here for a week or 10 days, and they don't care because they're not going to stay here. So those are the ones you have to deal with, and they change every week, 10 days, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's sort of, we've got a problem that it's going to be really difficult to solve in the long run, because we have got this reputation throughout the country of being, hey, come on in, we got a drum circle, we're going to party downtown. And it's a hard one to change.
Well, I think the vast majority of people who come to do that would follow the rules. If they were simple and clear and they knew what the rules were, they would.
Probably.
And if, musicians could play here but not here, or whatever, if it were reasonable and easy to understand, I think they would.
You have to sort of determine who's a musician, though, because a lot of people say, oh, yeah, I'm a musician, and they're not. They're holding an instrument. That doesn't make you a musician.
And a plastic bucket.
Yeah.
Right,
and so someplace, how do you got to make a line here that you are not really a musician. Maybe they should have to take a test, Sing 3 songs if you're okay, if you go down and play.
Just to move it to another subject completely from downtown, town gown relations. A friend of mine said, he's a university professor, and he said, if only they would just get the Eastern Access Road done, the traffic up and down High Street would be so much less. Why can't they just do that? And I said, well, maybe a lot of the West Side residents like to walk on the Pogonip, maybe that's why, but what do you think about that future option? Is that ever going to happen?
Well, yeah, I can't imagine it happening. I can't imagine it partly for the Greenbelt reasons that you've sort of alluded to, but also from what I've read about it, it would be extremely expensive, almost impossible. Just the engineering of it, the geology of that site is just really amazing. And I think when they looked into it a little bit a few years ago, they realized that. I think that just like so many things, we all want to believe that there's one answer, that if we only did that, it would fix everything. And it's never that way,
But disappointing.
What a drag.
Well, let's take another town gown solution. What about them buying up condos here and there in town and down the visitor center with a old hotel?
Yeah.
Is that going to be a trend we're going to see more of?
I don't know, Rachel, and I think it's probably likely to some degree, because they're growing, they're building on campus, but they need more housing in the community as well. I really do think, though, that there's an opportunity for real economic growth that would benefit the city of Santa Cruz if we could take advantage of all these people who are graduating. We have this new engineering school now, right? I have this vision of live-work space, but instead of artists, it's live-work for inventors. These little engineers graduate, and they come down to get a live-work, and then they get a patent, and they make $1 bajillion, and we get some, right?
Great idea.
I don't know how that'll all work. But I think, they've
the final
got this.
solution.
They've got Seymour Center developing now. I really think we have ways to work within the growth of the university that helps us too. I just hope we can be smart enough to do that.
We have just about 1.5 minutes left before we go to our results. Any final questions on the future of the new makeup of the City Council?
I think it's going to be an exciting, challenging year. I'm looking forward to it. I don't know who's going to get elected. I suppose I have my guesses.
Yeah, well, who would be your first 3 choices to work with?
I think, well, the people I've supported, that's public knowledge, Tim and Mike and Cynthia. I've really enjoyed working with Tim on the council. He's so thoughtful, he's so smart, and he doesn't abandon his positions. You know, it's just great. I don't always agree with him, thank goodness, you know, but I really, really have enjoyed working with him. And the downtown ordinances were difficult for him. He was struggled with it, and he was so there, and he worked so hard on it. So I'm certainly hoping that Tim is elected, and I feel confident that he will be, as well as Mike and Cynthia.
Well, Emily Reilly, I want to thank you for coming on this
welcome.
evening and talking with us, and good luck in your next
Yeah,
term.
thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
And we're going to go to Joel Domhoff now with more election results here on Community Television.
All right, Rachel, thank you very much, and thanks to Emily Reilly for joining us. I'm a big fan of Emily's. Her bakery is just 2 blocks from my house, so her muffins have, on more than one occasion, hit the spot. So nice to see Emily in here. Folks, you know the big race. We've been telling you about it throughout the evening. It's Mark and Marty. Mark Premack, Marty Wormhout, 3rd District County Supervisor position is available. The earlier numbers we've shown you have all been absentee ballots, but now, as you can see, 4 of 46 precincts are reporting in numbers, and Mark with a 55.5% mark, Marty with 44.2. We'll keep an eye, as we've told you throughout, a close eye on that race. Next up, it's City Council of Santa Cruz time, and new numbers here for you as well. Cynthia Mathews with just over 18% of the vote. Mike Rotkin also over that 18 number. Tim Fitzmaurice is trying to cut into Aldo Giacchino's upset bid. He's cut that deficit to about 2%, as you see there. And then in 5th place, it's Karen Wobleski and Greg Lopez, each with just over 7% of the vote. Moving now to the big measures of the night. Measure P, you all know, Santa Cruz utility tax repeal. The no vote is leading there, 62.7%. The yes, 37.3%. And again, that's 3 of 42 precincts now reporting those numbers. Now also updating numbers, 3 of 42 precincts on Measure Q, the hotel tax. And as you see there, the yes vote, 54.7%. The no, just over 45%. Shifting cities now, we work our way southward to Capitola, the City of Capitola Council. There are 3 seats open there. Robert Bob Begun has a 26.6% mark. Bruce Arthur with 26 even. Stephanie Harlan 24.1, and Dennis R. Norton just over 23% there. 2 of 11 precincts reporting there, as you could see. Again, we're going to move farther south now. It's the City of Watsonville, District 3. 0 of 4 precincts are in. Antonio Rivas with just over 61% of the vote. Ron Swank just under, I should say, 39%. So Rivas with an early lead there. And then we'll scroll our way down to District 7, where the other seat is up for grabs. And as you see here now, Dale Skillicorn with a huge lead on Arcadio Viveros. Again, that's just 0 of 5 precincts reporting, so it's just absentee numbers we're showing you, but Skillicorn with a 72.28% lead there. Next up, Santa Cruz School Board races. Area 1, 2 seats available. Judy Cook with just under 40% of the vote. Tim Willis with just over 33% of the vote. Jim Logsdon coming in with 27%. And so, as I told you, 2 of those 3 will advance. Area 2, there's just 1 seat open. Chris Brosda trails Mick Ruth big time. 71% for Ruth, just under 29% for Brosda. And now we have 11 of 122 of those precincts reporting. Scrolling down now, Area 3, 11 of 122 precincts in there as well. 1 seat is open, and John Wasserberger with the early lead, just under 38%. C.C. Pinero just over 28%. Michael Besky, 21%, and Luis Lynch with 12%. It's a quick update, folks. That's it. We'll be back in 20 minutes with more numbers, but now we're going to go back to your 9 o'clock host, Rachel Goodman. Rachel.
Thank you, Joel. And right now we have for you, taped earlier today, an interview that Geoff Dunn did with Bruce McPherson. We'll go to that now, and we'll be right back with some more live interviews here at Community TV. And we hope you join us for the rest of the evening. We have lots of results for you. Every 15 or 20 minutes, we'll be updating the local results, the 3rd supervisorial race, the gubernatorial races, and all the local city council races. Stay tuned.
Hi, we're back with Bruce McPherson, Republican candidate for Lieutenant Governor. Bruce, thanks for being here.
Thank you. It's great to be home, I'll tell you. It really is.
Well, you've been on the road a lot the last several months, most of the year, actually. What's it been like going around California?
It's a great experience, great opportunity. I really feel humbled and honored to be able to be in a position to really have a good chance of winning the statewide office and to get to know so many people that much better throughout the state of California. There's great people in California. There's 35 million of them, but by and large, they're all good people. They really are.
You've been representing the Assembly District and then the Senate District for the better part of a decade. I'm curious, though, what did you discover about California that you didn't know before?
Well, it's nothing really that much different because the districts that I've represented in the Assembly and the Senate, the diversity of the population, the ethnicity and so forth that is so mixed in this district is quite like California. And that was very helpful to me and people to accept me, whether it be the Asian community, the African American community, the Latino community. We really got some very good responses from them, and I really thank the people who elected me, well, 4 times here, and to give me that opportunity to know the basis, which I think I did in the newspaper business prior to that, but I know a lot better now.
I was actually down in South Central Los Angeles a couple months ago, visiting with people down there, and lo and behold, in an African-American newspaper in South Central, I saw an article about you, that you had been down there recently.
Right.
You know, a lot of Californians really know nothing about South Central and the large African-American community there, except what they see in the media. What was it like campaigning there?
It was very comforting to me, very well received and accepted, and I expected as much, to tell you the truth. It was, I went to churches in Compton. I've been lectured in political science classes at UC Berkeley. I really wanted to reach out, and probably the thing that identifies me more than anything as I've been going statewide now for really 18 months in this campaign, is to say I'm Bruce McPherson and I'm a Republican from Santa Cruz. And I can't tell the people here, and I'm here tonight because I wanted to be home on this election night and not in Los Angeles or someplace else, is to have the confidence and trust in me to represent them in the legislature for these last 9 years. It's a humbling and very satisfying experience and a very honorable one, too.
In a certain sense, running for statewide office in California launches you to a national stage. I mean, I've seen photos with you with a lot of LA celebrities, and particular side with Arnold Schwarzenegger, there's some talk about him running for governor in the year 2006. Do you sense that he's really serious about running for public office?
Yes, I do. I think he is very serious about it. And I think this Proposition 49 on the after-school programs that he has proposed and put a lot of his own resources, financial resources behind, is kind of a basis to put his political feet on the ground. I mean, there's been rumors of that for some time. Even this year, some people thought he might run for governor. But I think that Arnold Schwarzenegger may well run for governor in 4 years. But boy, I'll tell you, in politics, as you know, 4 years is a lifetime. 4 months, 18 months is a lifetime. It's been quite an experience. It's been great to meet him. It's been really great to meet so many other people like Danny Bakewell, a civil rights leader in Los Angeles, who supported me in this election. The Asian community, Sheriff Lee Bach of Los Angeles County came in and supported me, the Latino community. It's just been fantastic, and we've just been able to sit down and say, this is who we are and this is what we're about. And it's an eye-opener. The church services in Los Angeles are a little different from your conventional churches. But, you know, they're really deep-seated and they're well-meaning people, and they just really have accepted me and invited me into their churches, into their homes, and I feel very comfortable there.
Powerful experience being in
It
those
is.
churches.
It really is. Oh,
transforming,
it
yeah.
is. It is something that you have to be there to understand it, or just to get the feel of it. And I'll have to say also, one of the great experiences that I had as a Scotsman, as I am as McPherson, is the closing ceremony in Pleasanton of the Scottish Games there. The biggest games, I think, in the state. There was 4,000. And they had 34 pipe bands with, I think, 800 pipers playing something like Amazing Grace at the end. I mean, it just really touches you.
Yeah. We're actually taping this before the polls close today.
Right.
And we were talking earlier that polls have indicated that you're anywhere between 2% on some, depending on the turnout, to up to even 15% I've seen.
Right.
I'm curious. Do you think you would have had an even better shot had the guy at the top of the ticket been Reardon instead of Simon?
Yes, I do. I did endorse Dick Reardon in the primary. I think a moderate Republican like myself has a very good chance of winning in the statewide election. He didn't win, of course, and that would have made a big difference in the way our campaign was run and how we were running it. And he had me at his home for a reception during this campaign a couple months ago. Yeah, I think it would have made a huge difference. I don't think in my 26 years in the newspaper business and now 9 in the political world that I have seen such uncertainty and what could flip-flop, and really we could win close tonight or we could lose by 10 or 15. And it just depends. What are those undecideds? The highest undecideds just a weekend out or less than a week before the election. How much impact will the third-party candidates have? It's going to be something that I'm going to go to sleep to tonight or wake up to tomorrow morning and say, well, this is what happened, because frankly, you just can't say it. What I do know is that we have had I think, just a classy campaign, and I feel very good about it. We have had some energetic supporters, and we know that we were underdogs from the word go, but I have been that in my 4 elections prior. So that didn't scare me at all. It's just that I am really proud of the people who supported me and the field team that we had, what they've done. It takes a lot of coordination and energy just to get it done. It's a huge experience to run for a statewide office, I'll tell you.
There's probably never been a campaign for governor, at least in recent memory, that has had so much negative campaigning going on. Now, I haven't seen it at the lieutenant governor's level in the race. I haven't seen that kind of negativity enter into it. But as all political scientists know, this kind of negativity really turns off the electorate.
Yeah.
And they're expecting record low turnout today, even with the great weather that we were talking about and that we've had. My question to you is, even though I haven't seen it in the lieutenant governor's race, has this negativity crossed over into the atmosphere of politicking and campaigning throughout the state?
I think it's going to drive down the turnout. I don't think we're going to have higher. My estimate is that 52% turnout, which would be maybe the lowest in state history, which is very sad. And I do think it works, some people will say, but it also drives out and discourages voters, especially when they just keep going at each other. And we've had it not only in the governor's race, but some other races in the local area, in the Senate districts adjacent to us. So I do think it does drive it down, and I will say I think we've run a positive. You do have to distinguish your differences. I mean, there are some things that I think that I would do better than the incumbent, and if I didn't think so, I wouldn't have run in the first place. And one of the things people ask me about too in running for lieutenant governor, why run against an incumbent? It's so difficult because there were many people who wanted me to run statewide to get a moderate Republican to represent the party, so to speak, in a statewide office. And I just ran for lieutenant governor. Just the basis of it was, if you do the job you're supposed to do, you can be very, very instrumental in things that interest me the most. And that's the education issue as a UC regent or a CSU trustee or a member of the State Lands Commission, and the environmental protection and of our natural resources, and things like me going up a couple months ago, now I guess it is, to Big Basin to celebrate the centennial. As that is the first state park in the system, and my great-grandfather Duncan having a lot to do with that.
Absolutely.
And I'll tell you, that is still good. But those are the things, and economic development, and I really think, I'm really concerned about how the state finances have been operated in these last 4 years, especially the last 2 or 3. And I wanted to make a statement and try to be part of the change. And we'll see what happens by tonight. But I decided it wasn't the easy road, but it was the road that held my interest, and I believe the strength that I've exhibited in the last 9 years in the legislature.
You know, my sources up in Sacramento tell me that the Democratic caucus up there is very concerned about Gray Davis's performance. They're very concerned about the way that the role that money has played in his campaign for a long period of time. I've heard that there's going to be some statement made by Democrats up there immediately after the election about Gray Davis and his performance as governor. Have you heard anything about this?
I think so. Honestly, there are several members of the Democratic caucus in the Assembly and the Senate that do not appreciate the way Gray Davis has operated as governor. He hasn't been involved in policy and developing the policy. He's a man in his own world. He's separated from it all. And I think he has some bigger enemies on the Democrat side than he does on the Republican side. And I don't know, you could be right. I think it might happen. Gray Davis, after his first election, soon thereafter said to his legislators, you're here to implement my vision. Well, I don't think people like the picture they've seen that's been developed in the last 4 years. And yes, I think there could be something happen to the Democratic caucus. And when you really look at the major pieces of legislation that were passed, it was pushed by Democrat leaders like John Burton of San Francisco more than Gray Davis. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was really setting the agenda of what was going to be coming before the governor. The governor wasn't putting it out there and saying, this is what I want. It was more, there was a revolt of sorts within the Democrat caucus. So they're not very appreciative of some of the things that Gray Davis has done. And it is pretty gross the way the amount of money he's had, and if he wins as he is favored to do so tonight, to spend $68 million and not move in the polls and really not budge over the low 40 percentile of favorable, unfavorable, that's a pretty sorry statement, I think.
Okay, we got a couple minutes left, and I'd be remiss, I think, if I didn't mention that you've gone through a real terrible tragedy during this period. It's been a terrible tragedy for me. I can only imagine for you and your wife. But I also have felt his spirit in the campaign, and I'm wondering how his life has found its way into your campaigning around the state.
Well, if I would have quit, he really would have been mad at me. He was so excited for me to run, and he's with me every day, every minute of my life, and we were best friends, So it's been very, very difficult at times, but I just carry his enthusiasm, his spirit, and saying, listen, Dad, this is what I wanted you to do. And so we just stuck with it. And God bless Mary and our daughter Tori, and we were together today and went to the voting booth. And I don't know, it's worth the price you pay when you love your family so much and it's just so close to you. And if I just had any, get politics aside, if I can just tell people that, go home and hug your kids today and communicate with them, because we had that and I had no regrets. Hunter lived a full life for 27 years, and boy, I lived it, and we lived it together, a whole family. And it's harder than heck a lot of the time, but what carries us on is that I know that he would want us to do this.
I've seen the support you've gotten from your family, from the community, from the state. I know that people you see around the state know about this. What's been the response to this when you've been out campaigning?
Well, they just say you have a lot of guts to do this, and I don't know if it's guts. It's just he's in me, and this is what I tell you. He just would have wanted me to do this, and if I wouldn't have, he would have been ticked off at me. So I'm doing it, and God help us. He believed, I believe, and I'm going to be with him someday, and we'll all be together someday in the future.
Well, I had the joy of seeing you two guys together, And it was a great joy, and you've been a role model for me as a dad, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful to have known Hunter, and congratulate you on running this campaign.
Thank you. We think we ran an upstart campaign, a real straightforward one, and I feel very good about how we conducted ourselves.
Thanks very much.
Thanks a lot. It's always good to see you, my friend. All right, thank you.
All right, we thank Jeff Dunn for securing that interview earlier this evening and getting it on tape for you viewers. Update time, folks, and as you know, Mark and Marty is our main focus. Mark Tremack, Marty Wormhout, the race for 3rd District County Supervisor. We now have 13 of the 48 precincts reporting, and as you see here, Mark with a 53.8% tally, Marty Wormhout 45.9. Again, that's 13 of 46 precincts reporting. Santa Cruz City Council, our next area of focus. Cynthia Mathews, again, as expected, along with Mike Rotkin, both with over 18% of the vote. Aldo Giacchino continues to lead in a bit of an upset over Tim Fitzmaurice for that 3rd seat. His percentage lead has been cut to less than 2, but he does lead nonetheless. Next up, it'll be the measures and propositions. First, Measure P, highly controversial, as you know, the effort to repeal the utility tax. And as you see here, the no vote continues to lead. Now we have 7 of 42 precincts reporting. The no's with just under 65%, yes with 35%. And the hotel tax, Measure Q, the yes votes leading there, 54% yes, 46% no. Propositions now, Prop 47, this would fund schools from kindergarten through college. And you don't see the numbers, but I can tell them to you. 54% for the yes, 55 actually will round up here. No is 45%, so a 10% lead there. And Prop 49, the after-school programs, again, that's the Arnold Schwarzenegger bill. 53.8% yes, 46.2% no to this point. Time now for Lieutenant Governor numbers. Again, it's Bruce McPherson, Santa Cruz native, against incumbent Cruz Bustamante. And the numbers here, it's tied, folks. We don't have them for you on screen, but I'll tell it to you. 46.4 to 46.4. It's a dead heat at this point. So McPherson and Bustamante going down to the wire. Governor race now, you see the numbers here. Gray Davis and Bill Simon. Simon had an early lead, but Davis continues to come back. Now it's virtually a lock at this point. So again, that's a race that may go down to the wire. Soquel Creek Water District now our area of focus. 3 open seats here. And as you see, Bruce Jaffe with just under 20% of the vote. Jack Beebe with just over 18%. Daniel Krieg, 16.7. And Nancy Wells in 4th there with 13.9. Catherine Sweet and Sherry Bobby making some noise as well. Again, 3 will advance from that list. Next, it's the San Lorenzo Valley Water Board. 3 seats open in this race. And as you see, Terry Vieira and Lawrence Prather and James Raposa, they're all right around 23%. Gordy Stewart and Janet Laidlaw, each with about 14% of the vote. And we're now getting reports from 11 of 26 precincts in that race. SLV School Board now, we move from the water to the schools. Area 1 seat open. And 11 of 30 precincts reporting here. And as you see, Stephen Krause and Bob Foltz in a real dogfight, 51.7 to 47.8, the numbers there. So that one will go down to the wire as well. Area 2, 11 of 30 precincts reporting here. Ed Bischoff with the lead over Linda Kiernitzky. And again, that's a close one, just 3% difference in that race. Finally, we'll take a look at the measures. First, Scotts Valley Measure R. This is their utility tax for that city. And as you see, yes, with an overwhelming lead there. 3 of 10 precincts reporting. It looks like the yes will pass there. And down south in Watsonville, Measure S, the water bill, public water additives. A no means yes to fluoride here. 6 of 24 precincts reporting yes with a slight lead to this point. That's it. We'll be back in 20 minutes with a new set of numbers for you, but now we're going to rejoin our host, Rachel Goodman and John Sandidge, with another guest.
And welcome back. I'm John Sandidge along with Rachel Goodman, and you're with Community Television's coverage of the 2002 election. Our guest for this period of the show is Mike Rotkin. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, glad to have you here. I like the button. Got Mike?
That mic, yeah, that's good. The student came up with that. I thought it was a great idea.
It is a great idea. So let's see here. You now are in second place, just 1/10 of a percentage points from the lead.
I'm closing on Cynthia Mathews. Look out, Cynthia, here I come.
I guess what I wonder is, after all of the time you put in at this and going to all the meetings and being the mayor, and you're back again. What prompted you?
You know, some people have suggested that I really need a 12-step program.
Yeah, that's
kind of an addiction of some sort. The truth is, I really enjoy being in public life. I really find the satisfaction of working with neighbors and folks in the community. And when they come, you can't fix every problem, but every so often people bring you a problem that you actually can do something about. And I just find huge satisfaction in that and feeling like I've accomplished something when I work with people to fix a problem or try and solve some issue for the city. And I find real meaning in it and satisfaction in it. And I think that's important in my life. I would think most people would look for something like that. And it's not that I don't find that in my private life or even in my work life, but there's something about being involved in shaping the future of the city, the place that you live, that I find really exciting.
Yeah, a very good answer, and I'm glad to hear that. You wonder why people put themselves in the position, because you get heat all the time in the newspaper and the letters, and Mike Rotkin's a communist, Mike Rotkin's this, but you keep forging ahead and to do this job.
Well, you develop a thick skin after a while, and hopefully you don't become sick to responding to people and their concerns, but you feel the people that are sort of get up and make rude comments that have not really thought about what the issues are. At some point, those just don't bother you very much. I've been in that for almost 18 years now, and after a while, I'm willing to engage people. I disagree with folks sometimes, and I think that's fine. But when someone's just sort of on the attack, I remember somebody once, we used to get $50 a month. For my first 10 years on the council, we were paid $50 a month. Now it's $1,000 a month. But at $50, a guy got up in front of the council and pointed his finger at us and said, "I pay your salary." And I think something else we want to say, "Here's your $50. Here's your 3 cents and your share, of the $50." But it's basically, as I said, there are times when it's frustrating. You can't get things accomplished you'd like to, and you can't get 4 votes to make something happen. But I think it's the pleasure that comes from actually seeing things, really be results. I mean, just to give one example, when I first got elected in 1979, the city was spending $80,000 a year on all human service programs. And when I left in 2000, we were spending a little over $2 million a year on those programs. We're talking about senior meal programs, child care programs, recreation programs for kids, counseling programs, a whole range of things. And I didn't do that alone, but I feel like if I weren't there, maybe that wouldn't have happened. And that's that allows me to feel pretty good about stuff at the end of the day. And
a nice legacy.
And on that level, I think that's important. Or the fact that in our city we now have a green belt. We're one of the few cities in the country that actually has a green belt that stops urban sprawl around our city. And again, I did not do that by myself by any means, but I played a key role in that in certain places and stuff, and feel at the end, gee, this is a better place to live because I served on the council, and that makes me feel good, to be honest. That's the satisfaction that comes from it. And I don't think any of these people, there's 12 people in the race this year, none of those people are running for the money. I mean, each of them has we might disagree, but each of them has some idea about, if they were on the council, they would do something to make this a better place to live. And I think that's a good motivation.
I wanted to add that we're also a nuclear-free zone here. That makes it one of the few cities in the country that they're not allowed to drop bombs on.
There's a lot of stuff that we're first at.
Yes, I know.
We're still alone at here.
Yeah. Rachel?
Well, it was kind of along the same lines. I wanted to ask you, after 18 years, whether you find your style of doing politics changing over that time, or your position shifting after the long run.
I don't think my worldview or how I see the world or the politics that I have really changed in any dramatic way. It's funny, in this election, there was a group of people who came out with a newspaper ad, it was a quarter-page ad in the Sentinel, and they announced, they endorsed a slate of people. They hadn't asked me, but I was on a slate with a number of other candidates that I hadn't necessarily endorsed or connected to. And the others, they said nothing. They just listed their names. But for me, they said had to say something. They wrote, "He's changed. He has common sense now."
Oh, I saw that ad.
So some people think my views are changing, I guess. But I think what's changed over time is
you start to realize you don't spin your wheels as much. You don't waste as much energy on things you can't get accomplished, frustrated and, sort of crying out into the wind about things you can't get done. I've always said that one of the most important things a council member needs to learn is how to count to 4. And after a while, you realize, look, if I can't get 4 votes, there's no reason for me to run around town, take out ads or something else. This is not going to happen this time. Maybe I'll wait for 2 years and bring it back or something. So I think I've become more pragmatic in terms of actually getting the particular things through and decide what to fight for this year versus next year or something. But I'm still basically a social justice advocate. I haven't changed my views about that. I still strongly involved in anti-war activities, labor stuff on campus. I mean, my politics haven't changed on any of these sort of fundamental issues, environmental kinds of politics. Maybe if anything's changed, I'd probably mellow it out in style on some level. I'm, unlikely to be, attack somebody personally, which I might have done 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And now I tend to look at stuff more institutionally and figure out what does it take to make something shift in some way. And rather than sort of making enemies, I try and work with people. But I haven't changed my views of what ought to happen or the kind of city I'd like to see in any significant way.
Earlier, Emily Reilly was here talking about the very difficult discussion they had to have about ordinances, and it's probably not going to really go away, this downtown issue. And right. Some people have gone so far as to say it's been trumped up by the papers as an issue where it really isn't, but it feels to me like the public feels it is, and so is putting pressure on the city council to do something. When you're on there, if you are, it looks like you will be, what kind of ideas and approaches might you take that might be different or continuing?
Right. Well, the problems of people's behavior, some people's behavior downtown is ongoing. It's not, and it's in every city. I mean, there's not an urban area in the country that hasn't got something of this problem. And when people say, it's trumped up, I don't believe that. I think that it goes in waves. And if people get a sense downtown that the police are not going to enforce existing ordinances, or people will let you get away with openly smoking dope on the street or worse, or that if you can harass people, follow them down the street cursing at them because they didn't give you change when you asked for it, that stuff will start to happen. And messages do need to be sent from time to people to say, look, this is where we're drawing the line. This is acceptable behavior. This is not. And in '94, we passed a bunch of ordinances that were very concrete. I'm a member of the American Civil Liberties Union on the board of directors here locally. I really care about people's civil rights and not violating them, but there's no civil right to harass people. I mean, that's not in the First Amendment, that you can harass people out in public on the streets. And so for me, it's always been a question of enforcing the laws in a reasonable way. The laws we passed were not so much about spaces, you could be here or there, but you can't get closer than 3 feet from somebody when you're panhandling. We said it's legal to panhandle. You just have to stay not in their face, and you can't follow them down the street or block their way. And we try to really make reasonable things. And, some people felt like, well, passing any laws is repressive or something. But I feel like as long as the laws you pass are ones that you think make sense and that people think, you shouldn't be closer than 3 feet from somebody when you're asking them for money. You're basically extorting money from them or gang up with 3 people. We want spare change, and there's one person being surrounded. So for me, the issue is not getting new ordinances. I don't really think that we needed new ordinances downtown. But I do think people have to send a clear message that certain kinds of behavior is acceptable and other stuff's not. It's not okay to lie down in the middle of the sidewalk, put all your worldly goods out there, and block the sidewalk from people walking down there. To me, it's fine to sit against the edge of the building or hang out. We shouldn't have laws that make it illegal to look strange or whatever. But in terms of behavior, people should not be aggressively, effectively assaulting people to get money out of them or harassing them. And I think the way you deal with that is not these big public hearings. I think the way that gets dealt with is what I did when I was the mayor the last time. You talk to the merchants, you talk to the musicians, you talk to the police and the host, and you go to the watch meetings where the police meet every week before they go out and do their work, and you say the city council does not want you repressing people, but we do want you to enforce the laws. And I think what's happened in the last couple of years is there was a message sort of sent out there by the city council: don't harass anybody, to the police. Don't bother anybody, let the stuff go. We don't want to get in, people will be upset if we have anybody arrested down here. And I think that message eventually got out to the street, and people started thinking, I can do whatever I want here. And you start to attract people who are not the folks that normally hang out on Pacific Avenue, but people come from other communities. Here's a place where they don't seem to mind if you act out on the street. And so I think the job of the council is not long public hearings that go to 2 in the morning to pass new ordinances, but it is to work regularly with the musicians that are down there and the merchants and the people that are on the street, and just to try and send a clear message that
we want to have a downtown that's inviting to everybody and that's not driving people away. And it wasn't just perception. There were some problems. And I think that even just the fact that the council talked about it made most of the problems go away. And it is better now than it was a month ago or 2 months ago. But I think that's the way to handle it rather than a whole bunch of new ordinances. Or the hearings are not very productive. I mean, you spend forever debating this stuff and not really resolving any problems. And that is not the way I want to spend my time on the city council.
What would you like to do? What's your priorities?
My single biggest priority is affordable housing, and I think what we need to do in Santa Cruz is some serious rezoning in the downtown and the south of Laurel area. If people drive down Washington Street, you get a sense of the place where the old auto dealers used to be. There's these big empty lots, and there may be some small business in the middle of it, but the lot's empty. And you could build a commercial establishment downstairs, and there's a lot of housing upstairs. Thousands of units could be built there. We need to come up with a trust fund for housing, so we can subsidize the housing and make it really affordable. And that's the
What is affordable? Let me break in. What are you calling affordable housing? There seems to be
affordable
different
housing.
numbers.
I think we have to have housing that's affordable by the way the federal government defines it is by people who make 60% of the median income in the community. So you take, here's the level where there's as many people make more than this as make less than it, and then pitch a number below that, not at that number, but at 60% of that number, that the housing should be affordable by people in that range, which means you really make it affordable to low and very low income people in the city. And that takes subsidy. You cannot build housing without subsidy that will be affordable by those folks. And so it's really complex, but you got to find places to build it. We've had fights about that. I think I know where I want it to go. I got to find 3 more votes that agree with me. Near the public transit lines, you don't have to spend so much money on parking spaces for everybody. It's a place that doesn't block anybody's view. It's not on the edge of town, sort of destroying our green belt or starting urban sprawl movements or something. And you could build several stories. I mean, we live in a town where sometimes people think a 2-story building is a skyscraper, and I think we need to have a mix of 1-story, 2-story, 3-story, 4-story buildings, even occasionally a 5-story building downtown. And you could put them in places that are not going to block anybody's view of the ocean or the mountains or something. And I think we could build thousands of units of rental housing that would be affordable by people, and that requires years. That won't happen in the first 2 years I'm on the city council. You start that, and you hope that it gets done sometime after that. And that's my highest priority. Another really high priority is to get this metro base completed for the transit district, because if we don't get this thing done, we're buying new buses, and we're going to have no place to fuel them with compressed natural gas. They'll be parked somewhere, and so we need to have a decent maintenance facility and a place to fuel the buses that we're buying, which are going to be a lot cleaner than the current diesel buses. And that's, again, every place we've picked before, somebody has a problem with it. So
I was going to say, what neighborhood?
Well, we're looking at doing it where the buses are now, which is in the Harvey West area, and not the big one that was going to move out some of the housing that's down there, but sort of it's going to be a multiple site place is what the plan is. And I think we have to sell that to the public, and people have to understand that it's got to be somewhere. And
well, that seems to be the best place, Harvey West Park. I mean, it's an industrial area, and there are some homes there, but somebody's going to be inconvenienced. You just can't do stuff without somebody being inconvenienced. We've just got a couple of minutes left till we're going to go to the next results here. And what are you going to do tonight? What's your plans?
I plan to mooch off of every party I can find. I'm going to go to the No on P party, and Cynthia Mathews and I are having folks over at her house. People are invited to come down there if they'd like to join us, and I'm going to go visit Marty Wormhouse's campaign. I've been supporting her campaign, and it's in her office over at the Galleria. And the Yes on Q folks are over at the West Coast Santa Cruz Hotel, and I think they should have good food over there. I'm going to go check that out, because that's the hospitality industry. They ought to be able to feed us well enough. And then
I'm going to follow this guy around.
And the Democratic Party's having stuff at their headquarters over on Branson 40, so I plan to go over there too. And
who is?
The Democratic Party. So some of the John Laird and the people that are running for statewide offices and stuff will have a party over there, and they promise good food and libations over there as well. So this is a party night for me. I plan to go enjoy myself. We've been working pretty hard on the campaign.
Well, here's somebody just handed a note from Rachel. There's a 65-vote difference now between Mark Premack and Marty Wormhouse. Mark's ahead by 60 votes. So it's changing as the night goes on. And we're going to go to Joel here in just a moment, and we'll be back. Our next guest is going to be Cynthia Mathews. She'll be here, so we'll warn her that you're on your way over and to hide the food. Mike, thanks so much for coming and joining us tonight.
I really appreciate being invited on.
All right, and we're getting ready now to move over to Joel, and we'll get you some results here of some of the rest of the election. You now know where we stand with Mark and Marty. Let's find out some more.
I'm in first place.
Are you? Did you move up?
I did.
Okay, well then I think we're going to make another prediction here that Mike Rotkin has been elected to city council.
No.
So this is our prediction.
This is the top vote
You have the right to do that. I'm optimistic, and that's all I'll say.
Okay,
We've been making wild
congratulations on your optimism. Joel, are you ready? Joel Domhoff for the results.
based on exit polls.
All right, John, thank you very much. And as you just heard, Mark and Marty in a tight battle. You see now 20 of 46 precincts reporting, and Marty Wormhout has closed the gap since our last update. It's now 51 to 48%, so just a 3% difference in that race. Santa Cruz City Council, you just heard from Mike Rotkin. He has taken the lead, 19.3% his total. Cynthia Mathews, 18.8. Tim Fitzmaurice, 12.5, and Aldo Giacchino now has dropped to 11.3. So Fitzmaurice has taken the lead in that close battle for the third spot in that race. Moving on now to the measures. Measure P, Santa Cruz utility tax repeal. 17 of 42 precincts now reporting the no vote. In the lead, 70% for that side, just under 30% for the yes vote. Measure Q, hotel tax, again, 17 of 42 precincts reporting there, and just under 55% for the yes, just over, I should say, 45% for the no. Moving on now to State Assembly race, 27th District. This, of course, to replace Fred Keeley, very popular Fred Keeley. And as you see here, John Laird, as expected, dominating this race, just over 63% of the vote. Chuck Carter, a distant second. 137 of 241 precincts reporting, so over half of them are in, and John Laird, as we expected, with the lead. Sam Farr is also one we expect to advance easily, and as you see there, he's doing it with no problems, just over 71% for him. Clint Engler, the closest competitor there, with about a third of the precincts reporting. Lieutenant Governor race, this has been tight throughout, and you continue to see that it is staying that way. First, we're going to look actually at governor's race, which has also been tight. Gray Davis and Bill Simon, just about a 0.9% difference there as Davis leads Simon. So clearly that one will go down to the wire. And the lieutenant governor race, Bruce McPherson, Cruz Bustamante, and you see here it has closed considerably. Bustamante now has taken a 3% lead on McPherson, who of course enjoyed an early lead. Watsonville City Council now, our next area of focus. District 3, one spot is open. Ron Swank, Antonio Rivas, they're battling it out. And as you see, Rivas with a lead there, half the precincts now reporting on that race. And as we scroll our way down to District 7, one spot open there as well. And Dale Skillicorn has taken a commanding lead on Arcadio Viveros, one of 5 precincts reporting there. Skillicorn with the lead. Capitola City Council now, 3 seats open in this race. Bruce Arthur, as you see here, with 25%, along with Bob Begun, Stephanie Harlan also with 25%, and Dennis Norton just under 25%. So this one will clearly go down to the wire. 8 of 11 precincts reporting there. As I told you, just 3 of those seats are available. Santa Cruz City School Board now, our next area of focus. Area 1, 2 seats are open. Judy Cook and Tim Willis looking to secure those 2 seats. Jim Logsden's effort to unseat those 2 incumbents. He's about 11% behind at this point with over half the precincts reporting. Area 2 now, just 1 seat open, and Chris Brosda trails, as he has throughout the night, to Mick Ruth. 72 of 122 precincts reporting there, and Ruth with just under 70% of the vote. Area 3 now, C.C. Pinero, Santa Cruz Community TV of Santa Cruz's own, has taken the lead here. 72 of 122 precincts reporting, and Pinero has passed Wasserberger by 1%. So again, this one will go down to the wire. Michael Besky in third. Luis Lynch continues to trail in that race. That's it, folks. We'll be back in 20 minutes with a fresh set of numbers for you, but now we're going to go back for more political analysis with your hosts, John Sandidge and Rachel Goodman. Back to you guys.
Well, we're back live here in the studios like we weren't live before, but it's a live show for 3 hours. I'm John Sandidge, Rachel Goodman, my co-host, and our guest for this segment, Tim Fitzmaurice, who has moved into third place, a strong showing here. So it looks like...
Barely.
Well, barely, but it counts. You're ahead.
Yeah,
that counts. That's all.
I'm happy to be on TV when I'm ahead. It's a little better than, the last couple of hours.
And as we talked before, this is a night for more softball than hardball. You've been going through that for weeks and months now, and we're really glad that you took some time to join us tonight. And we were talking before we went on about you ran into some kids today up in...
Yeah, I was putting out yard sign, of course, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, hoping to get the last 4 hours, to influence the voters in the last 4 hours. And a couple of kids were walking home from Westlake School, and they said, well, our class talked about the city council race today, and we voted, and we voted for you. And I said, oh, that's great. You won, a unanimous vote. So it really made me feel good. Evidently, I'd given $2 to a kid at Emily's restaurant to help him pay for his cookies, and so the kid happened to be in that class, and so he told them all the story, that I had paid for the cookies, that he didn't have enough money to pay for it. So
now you know how to win elections.
Now I know how you win elections.
Go out and give people cookies.
I'll tell you, it doesn't hurt.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all.
Give enough cookies out, you'll probably get elected.
Well, we've been talking with other members of the city council about priorities, and we thought we'd start off with you tonight. When you're elected tonight, where do you want to go?
Yeah, I don't want to jinx anything.
No.
It's really hard.
Okay, if you're elected tonight.
Well, I have a plan. I do have a plan. I have a lot of ideas about where I'd like to go. My primary idea, of course, is to continue with the affordable housing projects that I've been interested in. I think there's some projects that need protecting, and I'm really happy to see what's happening with the proposition about shelter and housing. I think so far it's winning. I haven't seen what you have up here.
Yeah. I don't think it's not listed.
It's not up there. Okay. Well, anyway, it was winning the last time I looked, and that's going to be an important proposition for this community because there are affordable housing projects we need to save, and we can use that money. And so that's sort of what got me into it, because I was so interested in some other projects. But I also wanted to reorganize the fire department, and that's a real serious concern of mine that we had a fire department that hasn't grown in its staff for 10 or 12 years, and there are ways, I think, that we can grow by reorganization and without necessarily busting the budget. So I think there's some opportunities there if we can, put ourselves seriously to the matter.
When you say reorganizing, do you mean moving putting departments together like they've been trying to do?
Let's say being more regional about it. And I think we have an inspired chief, a great chief, and a great department, wonderful firefighters in our city. They showed their skill in the fire up at UC not long ago. But we also saw that there was a great opportunity here for improved regional cooperation. And that kind of thing, I think, is we got to put a little more thought into that and actually make that happen. And I think there's a great opportunity there.
Okay. Rachel?
I was just wondering, with 2 veterans coming back on, it looks like, so far, how's it going to change the timbre of what you can accomplish, and what are you looking forward to doing with these particular colleagues?
I don't know. I don't know what the future holds for the council. I think there will be some change in the chemistry. If I'm there or if I'm not there, I think there's going to be change. I think they're certainly doing so strong that they're going to certainly get elected. I know these people are serious about their commitment to the city. I know that on some matters we disagree, and so maybe we'll struggle a little bit to try to come to some compromise that'll really serve the whole community in its interests. I look forward to it. I look forward to it because I have been able to work with the broader council. The living wage was a 100% vote, and campaign finance was pretty solid vote. Those kinds of ordinances that I've worked on have resulted in pretty good cooperative connection between the different council members, even from different perspectives. So I'm assuming that I can work with them, and they've certainly been really generous in their attitudes toward me throughout the campaign. Being the incumbent, I was sort of a natural target for anybody that wanted to talk about, throw the bums out. And in fact, that's sort of what I'm facing. I think to some extent, people really like change. And so but I saw no negativity coming from them. And that's really reassuring, because I think the community has to come together if it's going to make any progress. And certainly, whether I'm there or not, these people are going to have to learn how to work together in an era of sort of diminishing revenue and all of that.
I was going to mention that. Emily Reilly was here, and she was recalling a time where her town was on strike, and at first they did without dessert, and then they did without meat in the soup, you know, and they were wondering how long. And she didn't feel like we were going to get to that point economically in this country. However, given the dwindling revenue, some people are, but as a city, with revenues and such, given our economy, what kind of hard choices do you think, what looks like dessert and what looks like the main course that you have to protect in this, if you're projecting? Well, let's get specific. Let's talk about programs that you may be faced with cutting in the next year or two.
Well, that's difficult to say. You know, the hard choices are going to be working on the maintaining of our environment, for instance. Maintaining the plantings along the river, just take something fairly specific, or maintaining our parks adequately, because these are not things that people generally walk out and vote their hearts on, but they certainly notice it when it's not there. And so the hard choices are going to be trying to make sure we're putting money into that infrastructure that's really important to the city and making the city function, making people happy in their city. They don't even necessarily realize it. So the kinds of things that may be lost, I know it's almost impossible to say. You know, given the fact that I think we face almost a $2 million cut next year, no matter what, in our spending, it's, you know, because of the loss of sales tax, we could be facing some really difficult choices. I certainly don't want to second guess or guess right now what those choices would be. I would love to see across the board cuts, but it wouldn't surprise me if we had to cut into some programs. My real concern is that we somehow maintain our green belt and somehow maintain the environmental quality in the area. And I'm really afraid that might be something that would be lost.
One of Emily's ideas was to engage the citizenry in doing some sort of downtown, you know, supplementing the police by becoming a downtown person that you volunteer to help clean up, or police. And maybe something like that she was mentioning could be done for the environment or for plantings, you know, garden club, who knows. But it may be that we as citizens end up being asked to chip in, you know, our time, maybe not our money through taxes, but you have to ask the public to help you in many ways, perhaps, in a time when, you know, dwindling returns are there.
Right. We were out at John Franks Park on the east side talking to those residents about that park and that playground. And they said they would be willing to commit to be involved in the maintenance of that park. I think the city is responsible for building the infrastructure, though, and I don't like the idea of passing that off to the neighborhoods, because then all of a sudden you get into a kind of situation where certain neighborhoods may be wealthier than others, or those kinds of situations. The city has to make sure that it works hard on the equity of all of those things. But certainly neighbors have, you know, on various medians and on various plantings in the community, and people are already working along the river to try to clean it up. So a lot of volunteerism could be one of the ways that we supplement this.
Well, we keep our beaches clean that way. We have beach cleaning days, and lots of people come out to participate in those. I mean, it could work in other ways, too.
Yeah, the third Sunday of the month or something, a group of people go out to the river, and I've been out there, walk along the river and pick up trash, and the city comes along and picks up the bags and those kinds of things. And I think we need to, you know, invigorate those programs and make them work.
And it's a good community thing. Even if we could afford it, it's a good way to keep people involved in their community, to see what really has to be done.
And when we did the graffiti removal day not long ago, you could see where, you know, citizens are committing to, you know, 15 minutes a week to make sure that they address problems of graffiti in their own neighborhood. So those kinds of things are crucial to the maintenance of a community. They say the health of a garden is reason's a burden, or something like, you know, people need to invest something of their own time and talent in the community, or else they really don't value it. So,
I told you at the beginning I wouldn't ask any hardball questions, but I've got to ask you really one hardball question. I'm sorry.
I don't believe it.
Okay.
Tell us about the beads.
Oh, the beads. Oh, now this is the No on P beads, the Mardi Gras beads. Yeah. Well, I mean, this is down at the No on P campaign. They're giving out the beads, and it's a celebration. Obviously, what the community has done is you know, it's a 65% vote the last time I checked. I don't know what it is now, but what the community has done essentially is said we really believe in city services and we really want them, and I mean, that's just wonderful.
Yeah, and it's a strong vote, 65 to 35 at the last count. We'll get another one here from Joel in just a few minutes. When do you guys go back to work after the election? Is it just everybody goes back in a week and the new people are there, or how does the transition work?
The transition would be, I think November 26th would be the day of the new council coming in, the old council departing. It will be the last Tuesday in November. We have a meeting set for tomorrow if no on P if yes on P passes. We have a meeting set for tomorrow.
All right, well, we have an update on the 3rd Supervisorial District. Marty Wormhout, 51%, and Mark Premack, 49%. Rounded just a little bit, but there's now like a 2-point difference. So Marty has pulled back ahead. She started out on our count anyway quite a bit behind, and as the evening wears on, she's moving forward here. So
I started out behind too.
Yes, and now we're getting the new one here. How much? 5 more minutes till we go to the results.
Well, I have another question, if you don't mind. I just wanted to ask, Santa Cruz City Council has kind of put Santa Cruz on the map a couple of times in the past few months in various ways, and some people cringe and some people are proud about that. The Iraq vote is one, and the second one is the medical marijuana, having them host the giving away of medical marijuana. How do you feel like the City Council ought to act in cases of pretty high profile, but not terribly substantial for the majority of the people, decisions?
Right. Well, I think the City Council should act on its principles, and especially when those principles are reflected by a large portion of the community. The medical marijuana was an easy decision because we've worked so closely with that organization for so long, and our own local sheriff and other people were a little appalled at the way things had happened in that particular case. We needed that kind of cooperation with them, and so there was no difficulty in making that decision that we were going to stand with them. And I think we stood with them in a responsible way. At the same time, I think there's a decision to make whenever you decide that you're going to express something from the community. I had no problem with the Iraq resolution either, and I was really pleased that I felt like we were 1 week behind certain changes at the national level where people were really expressing their discontent with the way that policy was being formed, that somehow we may, and it was in the New York Times, it was elsewhere, so somehow we may have said to our representatives and to other representatives that there's people in various communities that are ready to hear other arguments about this matter.
Do other communities,
really pleased by that.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Do other communities call you as a city council member and say, I'm from Podunk, Iowa, and we're having this particular same thing that you're having about medical marijuana? Do you get those kind of calls?
Oh, yeah. We get a lot of contacts, especially when, I wrote the medical marijuana resolution that we passed as a result of the raids and all of that. And when that resolution was sort of formulated, then people called us and wanted to know how we expressed that and what our position was and all that. And so we get individual citizens from various communities, especially on the Iraq thing.
Yeah.
We had individual citizens from various communities calling us, and other council and other governmental jurisdictions calling us.
So do they call you as a council member? Do they call the mayor? How does that work? How do you guys communicate?
Sometimes you get an email. You get an email to you. Somebody looks it up on the website. Sometimes it comes by way of addressed to the council, and then it goes to the mayor, and the mayor makes the response. Or we get phone calls. I think we had 20 or 30 kinds of inquiries.
And a little national press on medical marijuana.
Extraordinary amount.
Yeah. So where are you off to now? We're just about.
I'm going to go over to Marty Wormhout's campaign. I'm very happy to see where that's gone.
She is now, ahead by about 2 points.
But it's going to be a close race all night, and I understand her pain. I've had that pain today myself, and I probably will continue to have it. So I'm going to go off there and be supportive. I think anybody that decides to run for office is really doing something generous, and she's been generous to this community since the earthquake and before, and I'm hoping the community will remember that and be supportive of her.
Well, it looks that way. Well, we really thank you for coming in, Tim.
John.
Looks like we can make another prediction here too, but we won't, because We don't want to give any bad luck, but we...
Oh, don't jinx me.
No, we won't.
Please.
But at this point, Tim Fitzmaurice is in third place with 13.2% of the vote. So we'll give you a congratulations for this hour and hope it holds
You live
up.
life an hour at a time,
Yeah.
or maybe a minute
Maybe a minute.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you for coming.
All right, we're going to give you some more results now, covering the state, and bring you up to date. You're listening to, or watching, see, that's the radio in me. You're watching community television, and this is election 2002. We're going to go over to Joel Domhoff right now, and he's going to bring you the sports. No, he'll bring you some election returns. Joel?
All right, John, thank you very much. We also thank Tim and Rachel for that segment. We're going to start off, folks, as you know, with 3rd District County Supervisor numbers. 29 of 46 precincts have reported Marty Wormhout now with about a 3% lead on Mark Premack. So that race has gone back and forth throughout the evening, and it continues to do so. Wormhout now with the lead after trailing early on. Santa Cruz City Council race, you just heard from Tim Fitzmaurice. He has made a rally after trailing from most of the early part of the evening. Aldo Giacchino now has seen his lead disappear. Fitzmaurice now with a 3% lead for that 3rd seat. It appears Mike Rotkin and Cynthia Mathews will get those other 2 seats. Karen Wableski in 5th place with just over 7% of the vote. Moving now to propositions. Prop 47, school funding kindergarten through college. You can't see the numbers there, but I have them here, folks. 55% now say yes, we should fund those schools. 45% say no. And Prop 49 for after-school programs, just under 54% of you have voted thus far and said yes. Just over 46% have said no. Governor and lieutenant governor are next 2 focuses. First, governor's race, Gray Davis and Bill Simon. And you see here, it's a dead heat, 45% each. Perhaps a couple hundred vote lead there for Simon. And of course, many people believe that a vote for Peter Cameo is a vote for Simon. And that's one of the dangers many people believe of the Green Party, is it actually gets a Republican in there. So we'll keep an eye on that. Lieutenant governor numbers now, Cruz Bustamante and Bruce McPherson. Bustamante has opened up about a 4.5% lead there, and we'll continue to keep our eye on that. We've got about 35% of those precincts reporting on that race. Moving now to the land of water, Soquel Creek Water District, 3 open seats available. Jack Beebe and Bruce Jaffe appear to have the first 2, at least Jaffe does, with over 20% of the vote. Beebe in second with over 17%. Daniel Krieg and Nancy Wells vying for that 3rd spot. As you know, there's just 3 available. Catherine Sweet and Sherry Bobby also in the running there. Up to the valley now we go. San Lorenzo Valley Water Board race. 3 seats open in this one. 11 of 26 precincts reporting. 3 seats available, as I said, and Terry Vieira and Lawrence Prather have a lead along with James Raposa. So those 3 have been leading throughout. Gordy Stewart and Janet Laidlaw with just over 14% of the vote there. Finally, it's been an exciting Santa Cruz City School Board race, so we're going to continue to update that one for you. We now have 91 of 122 precincts reporting. 2 seats available in Area 1, Judy Cook and Tim Willis with the lead. Jim Logsden trying to hang in there, as you see. And as we move now down to Area 2, 1 seat open in this race. Mick Ruth has led throughout, just under 69%. Chris Brosda with over 30%, so it appears Ruth will get the vote there. Area 3 now, 1 seat open. CC Pinero continues to lead. She now has just under 36% of the vote. John Wasserberger over 30%. Michael Besky and Luis Lynch bringing up the rear, but Wasserberger has seen his lead disappear. Pinero is making a comeback, 91 of 122 precincts reporting there. It's getting fun around here, folks. We'll be back in 20 minutes with a fresh set of numbers. Now we're going to go back to John with another guest and more analysis. John, take it away.
Oh, there we are. And we're going to continue on here for about 15 more minutes tonight on Community Television's coverage of election 2002. And we'll keep you updated in the next 15 minutes or so if anything major comes up. And we'll go back to Joel with more results right at the top of the hour. Cynthia Mathews, welcome.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you here. So, well, the way it looks right now, it's you and Mike Rotkin and Tim Fitzmaurice. You're going back.
It looks good, and those were the results I expected.
Is that right? Did you miss being in office?
I stayed very active during the time I was out, actually working on the Measure C&D campaign for city schools, served on the Mission Street and Depot Site Committee, so I never really let go.
It sort of gets in your blood. I mean, I've heard Mike Rotkin say so, and Tim, and all of the people who do this. You get sort of caught up in it.
At its best, public service is a lot of fun because you do have the opportunity to really make a difference in your community.
Yeah, and
that's the plus side.
We were talking just before we went on about Aldo, and help me with pronouncing it. Cicchino sued you and Mike for running for office before 2 years was up. There was like a 20-day difference or something between when 2 years was officially up. And he was saying, well, 2 years is 2 years. But the courts didn't say that.
He maintained that we hadn't met the precise requirement for the term limits that the candidate or a potential candidate go off for 2 years, and challenged our ability to run for office in this election cycle. It did go to court. We, in fact, had the higher legal defense, and it was very definitively decided that what was meant by the local ordinance was that candidates had to sit out for a cycle of approximately 2-year election cycle between one election and the next in approximately 2 years. So that was resolved.
Yeah,
it shouldn't be a question for anyone else in the future.
Well, yeah, it's sort of a waste of time and a waste of money. But for him, it was a great move because his name, everybody knew. All of a sudden, everybody knew his name. He became a player. And obviously he became one because he's in 4th place and way ahead of any of the other people, and he was as unknown as any of them were. So do you think it was a move for recognition for him, or do you think he really cared about those 2 weeks?
I have to think that it was a bid for visibility.
Yeah, well, it was certainly a successful one.
Apparently so.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't win him the election, but his name...
Expensive, though.
Expensive, yeah. Well, it's an expensive thing to go. What does it cost for a city council person? How much do you think is a minimum amount you can spend?
Well, it'll be interesting to see in the end what the various candidates spend. We do have in Santa Cruz, as you probably know, a voluntary campaign expenditure limit, and all the candidates signed on to that. So we all agreed that we would spend no more than $19,000 on our campaigns. Now, I've spent quite a bit less than that. I'm not sure what Mike has or Tim, but I think you can't run a credible winning campaign without spending at least, I would say, probably in the order of $10,000. I mean, you've got to get yard signs. You've got to get out some mailings to reach voters. There's some basics.
Yeah. But you look at the remuneration, you make $1,000 a month, so it takes you a year and a half to get caught.
It's not for the money.
It's not for the money. Do you have, when you're running for this office, do you look for financial help too?
Oh, absolutely.
And how do you find that? Where do you go to look for it?
Well, I can speak for my own campaign. I looked over the various activities I've been involved with and just put together mailing lists, people I've worked with, and sent out a fundraising appeal and spoke to people personally and said, you know, you have to be pretty direct.
Yeah.
I'm running for city office. I'd like your support. You know? And I'm very pleased. I had over 300 contributors to my campaign.
That's a lot of people.
You just have to start buttonholing people that you know and ask for their support. And it's the financial support and also the grassroots volunteer support, because we had, and I'm sure anyone who lives in the city felt the effects, but we had volunteers doing precinct work in 2 waves, going out and walking precincts throughout the city, delivering literature door to door. And that's a lot of people taking a lot of Saturdays and Sundays, and it really is civic participation at its best.
And it must be gratifying to you as a candidate to know that there are that many people willing to take not just their money, but their time.
It's really important, and I think there again that shows the strength of a campaign to have that kind of grassroots support. And I think it's fun for people, it makes people feel engaged to say, here's someone I want to work for.
Yeah.
You know, you don't always win. But,
I've heard that, yeah.
But even so, to make the effort and take a stand, work on something you believe in.
Now, when you're in the city council and you're a member of the city council, you get paid, but you also have to have another job. And it seems to me that it's constant as a city council person. There's always a meeting. There's always somebody you have to talk to, someplace you have to be. How do you personally balance the time between your job and your city council job?
Well, I'm very fortunate that I have a job that I work half-time, for one thing, so that gives me a degree of free or available hours. But I also have a job that has a great deal of flexibility, so I'm able to adjust my work schedule to mesh those two together. And I think that's certainly true with Mike and Tim. We all have some constraints, but that's one of the realities of running for city council is it's very, very demanding, and you have to find those hours somewhere in your day.
Yeah.
It's one of the constraints, quite honestly.
I've always been amazed at how all of you sit through so many meetings. I mean, I think that would be one of the really downsides of having to go to meetings all the time.
Yes, and I would hope we can take a look at the number of meetings and the length of meetings and maybe be a little more efficient. One thing that's important to remember is every time the council is all at a meeting, there's several staff members also at that meeting, and it takes up a lot of their time and productivity. And so, particularly as we know we're facing some pretty tight times ahead, I think we're going to have to look at what kind of demands are we putting on our staff in terms of the hours that they're sitting in a meeting, and say, can we do this a little bit more efficiently for our sake, but also for their sake?
Yeah, I think that's something the rest of us don't think about is the staff time. We think of your time, that you're staying there till 1 or 2 in the morning, but of course there's other people that are keeping that going too. So a lot of times
those are expensive hours, and if they're hours they're not spending doing other work that I'm sure it's piling up on their desk. I think, oh my God, I wish I could work on that. So,
well, speaking of working on that, now you're back now. Certainly looks that way. Everybody says, "Don't jinx me," but I don't think that's going to change very much right now. What do you want to do? What's your priorities?
You know, before I came on, I was watching Tim's response, and I have to say it would be very similar to his in that simply maintaining city services right now is going to be a priority. And I suspect you've heard this from several people throughout the evening, but knowing that we are going to face some cuts, most likely in the coming fiscal year, just to hang on, to preserve the services we have is going to take a lot of energy, and so that's going to be number one. And looking for, I hope, new revenue sources so that we can minimize the cuts that we have to make.
Well, if Steve Hartman does not win on his bid to take away the city utility tax, where are you losing funds then? I mean, if that doesn't go away, where are the cuts coming from?
Well, with the dip in the economy, sales tax is down, the hotel tax is down, we lost a couple of major manufacturers which put our property tax down. So you put all those things together, and then our fixed increases with personnel are increasing. So you can just kind of look at the trends, and there
so
there's a job.
Where, if given the choice, which you will have, of where to cut, what are your ideas? I mean, you must have been thinking about this as you're going into this, that this is going to happen.
I have, but I haven't been involved in the budget on a day-to-day basis. And even though I have had 2 terms, and I would say the job isn't going to be new to me, I feel like I have to ramp up with the current realities before I want to take a stab at what kind of cuts might be in line. So one of the things that I'll want to do is meet with the department heads and city manager and just say, bring me up to speed, and I think that'll determine part of it.
Yeah. We've talked earlier this evening about the relationship between the university and the city. And there seems to be at odds all the time over what they're doing, they're building, and then they're coming into the city and buying buildings to put the students in. Is there anything we can do to say, why don't you build some apartments up there? Why don't you house more students up there instead of putting it onto the city and taking housing from the city?
That's a really complicated question. It's certainly one that needs to be asked. Just because of the financing of university construction, they have done some dorms on campus. But I think it is something that we probably need to focus on, to sit down with that as the sole agenda item and say, it's the elephant in the room.
Yeah. And they keep saying we're not going to grow anymore, but they keep saying, oh, we're going to grow some more. They don't seem to keep their word on their growth. Am I asking that? Is that a question that's tough for you to answer since you got to work for it? But that's just the way it seems. That they say, okay, we're going to go to 12,000. Well, maybe 12,500.
No, I think 15 has been the number all along.
Yeah, but it didn't. No, I mean it went to 15 at some point. It was, as I remember, it was at 12 at one point, and then they moved to 15. And even if that's not true, what's to stop them at 15? And that 15, by the way, is not just students. There's 15,000 students, but you have to have.
Well, then there's
another
everything that supports that.
That supports that. So we're talking 30,000 probably. So what do we do as a city to say, okay, thank you. Can we move on to another campus someplace?
What you do on that particular issue is what you do on any issue is say, identify what are the issues from the city's point of view, what are the needs from the university's point of view, and just see where the interests lie in common. What can we give to you to get so you get what you need to do? I mean, like, for example, is it zoning? What is it that they need to do a better job? Yeah. What is it that we can do? What is it that we absolutely need as a city? And just get into some serious negotiations. I hope we can do that.
Well, I hope so too. They're such an autonomous organization. They don't have to pay any attention to us.
That's true. But it's also important to realize that they are one of the economic engines for the city of Santa Cruz. Culturally, they have completely reshaped this community from what it was pre-university. So it's a source of great enrichment, not just economically, but culturally for this community. So it's hard for me to say that the university is just a solid negative. I don't know.
No, I don't think it's a solid negative either.
It comes out saying that way, but it certainly is the big kid on the block, and they operate by their own rules. So.
Yeah, they do, and a lot of people, of course, including Mr. Rotkin, have come out of the university and are part of the city and a part of the university. So maybe with that kind of thing, we can find some even ground. Before we're going to wrap it up here in just a couple of seconds, but over the years, I've watched your work on the city council, and I've also read the people who seem to be on a constant attack on Cynthia Mathews. How do you live with that? How much does that bother you, that people calling you names and accusing you of this and accusing you of that? How much does that affect your life?
Well, it's not fun, but I think anytime you run for public office, you realize that you become a public figure. You're open to that, and I try and be clear about what I stand for, what I do, and I'm secure about that, and I think that's how anyone has to operate. And then you say, well, sorry, I'm doing what I believe in. I mean, some people, I think, misconstrue how actions I've taken, my position. Other people just plain old disagree. And when you're in public office, that comes with the territory.
Yeah. It must get sort of difficult, though, to have people...
Yeah, but I have to say, on the other hand, the positive response is so much stronger, and the reaction in this campaign has been so broad and so gratifying. That's the plus. And the real plus is the positive results.
which seem to be growing here. The difference between the leaders and the followers are... But we'll find out more. Joel's going to give us the full results here at 11 o'clock. And you're hosting a party, I hear?
Yep.
Well, do you want to let our audience know where it is?
It's at my house.
All right.
It's great.
So you're over here, though, and who's hosting while you're here?
I'm running back there.
All right.
I think Mike's over there.
Yeah, Mike said he was going to get over there because you always have the best food. Well, Cynthia, thanks for taking the time on a very busy night for you. And It looks like we can wish you good luck, but you've already had a bunch of it, and we're pleased to see you back on the city council.
Thank you, and I'm pleased that Measure P is going down in flames.
Yes, yes. Sorry, Steve Hartman.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Okay, thanks.
All right. And we're about ready to wrap it up here on community television for 2002. We're going to go back to Joel, and he's going to give you one more set of results. And we thank you for being with us tonight, and look forward to 2 years from now where we'll do this all over again. And thanks to community television and all of the volunteers here tonight who have made this work so smoothly. Thank you guys very much. And Joel, you ready?
Ready as I'll ever be.
Okay, Joel, take it away.
All right. Thank you, John, and thank you to Rachel and Jeff as well, and I'll give a thanks here in a minute to everyone. But folks, first we need you to wake up, because this is it. This is our last update of the evening. You're going to see results as we get them off the computer. These will be as fresh as they can be, given our constraints with computers and etc. So every race now we're going to go through from 1 to about 20 here on our list. We'll start at the top with Mark versus Marty in just a minute. But first of all, we just want to tell you, this is it. These are the final results that we'll give you here on community TV. So don't go to bed for about 5 or 10 minutes. Here we go, the big race. We're starting it off. Mark and Marty, 3rd District County Supervisor, 31 of 46 precincts reporting. And as you see here, Marty Wormhout has about a 2.5% lead on Mark Premack as we go off the air. So that one will probably be decided tomorrow, if not later. Next up, Santa Cruz City Council race. You know it's been close. You know there's 3 seats available. Mike Rotkin and Cynthia Mathews appear to have 2 of the seats locked down. Tim Fitzmaurice in a battle with Aldo Giacchino for that 3rd seat. A 3% lead for Fitzmaurice. As we speak, 28 of 42 precincts reporting there. The measures now, you know they're controversial. Measure P, utility tax repeal. Been a lot of hype about it, and as you see here, the no is clearly winning. 74% for the no on P, 26% for the yes. It appears as if P will pass. Again, that's 30 of 42 precincts there. Same amount of precincts for Measure Q. That's the hotel tax. 55.6% for the yes, just under 45% for the no. So that one appears to be headed for a yes victory, but still a bit early to tell. 17th District now, U.S. Congress, Sam Farr. We predicted a lock, and with 105 precincts reporting out of 155, that lock is indeed now a fact. Sam Farr, 73.5% of the vote. A clear, easy victory over Clint Engler, the Republican challenger. 27th District now, the State Assembly race. We also predicted a John Laird victory, and here with 176 precincts reporting out of 241, Mr. Laird has over 67% of the votes, so it appears as if he too will get the victory in that race. Governorship now, first it'll be Gray Davis and Bill Simon. As you see here, it's been close throughout. It continues to be that way. Virtual lock here, deadlock, 45.5% apiece for each one of those two, so Gray and Bill neck and neck. Lieutenant Governor now, Cruz Bustamante and Bruce McPherson. And as you see here, Cruz with about a 2.5% lead on Bruce McPherson. So again, this is a race that's going to be tight throughout the evening into the wee hours of the morning. Prop 47 now, the school funding initiative, and I'm not sure of the numbers on that one, so we'll scroll left and take a peek. It appears as if the yes vote is leading there, 56 to 44 in that race, so school funding appears to be gaining a victory. And Prop 49, the after-school grant program, the Arnold Schwarzenegger measure, that one leading 55 to 45%, so it appears as if Arnold will get his victory there. Moving on now to the Capitola City Council race, 3 seats available. Stephanie Harlan, Bruce Arthur, and Bob Begun with the lead. But as you see here, Dennis Norton right on the heels of Begun. So with 9 of 11 precincts reporting here, that one won't be decided for quite a while as well. Moving southward, Watsonville City Council race. And as we go through this, first it's District 3 with 1 seat available, 2 of the 4 precincts reporting, and Antonio Rivas with a commanding lead on Ron Swank. As we scroll down now, District 7, our next area of focus. Again, 1 seat available, 1 out of 5 precincts reporting, and Dale Skillicorn appears to be on his way to an easy victory over Arcadio Viveros in that race. Santa Cruz School Board race, it's been a tight one throughout. It continues to be that way. 2 seats available for Area 1, 100 of 122 precincts reporting. Judy Cook and Tim Willis with the lead. Jim Logsdon trying to fight his way in there. As I said, 2 seats available in that 3-person race. Area 2 now, same amount of precincts reporting. Michael Ruth with a commanding lead on Chris Brosda, 69% to just under 31 for Brosda. And it appears as if Michael Ruth will get that victory in Area 2. Now here's the one we're all looking at here at Community TV. Area 3, C.C. Pinero, our own C.C. Pinero, just under 37% of the vote. John Wasserberger with 30%, so a 7% lead for C.C. Pinero in this race. 100 of 122 precincts reporting there. Soquel Creek Water District race now, 3 seats available, 27 of 37 precincts reporting. Bruce Jaffe, Jack Beebe, and Daniel Krieg with the lead there. Nancy Wells, Catherine Sweet, and Sherry Bobby continue to try and inch in to one of those 3 available positions. Moving on now, we go to the San Lorenzo Valley races. And Area 1 is the school board we're looking at now. 11 of 30 precincts reporting. Stephen Kraus with a slight lead on Bob Foltz. And again, it's early up in the valley, so that one may not be decided for a while. Area 2 now, same amount of precincts reporting. Ed Bischoff with the lead, but again, it's slight over Linda Kiernitsky. So up in the valley, it continues to be tight. I think that's it, or we have one more. Water. We're going to SLV Water Director, 3 positions available, 11 of 26 precincts reporting. Terry Vieira, Lawrence Prather, and James Raposa with the lead, as they have led throughout. Gordy Stewart and Janet Laidlaw trying to inch into one of those top 3 spots. And we have one more, I'm being told. The 2 other measures that we told you about at the top of the show, the Scotts Valley Measure R, 3 of 10 precincts reporting. This is their city's utility tax. And as you see, the yes vote dominating 74%, just under 26 for the no's. And then southward, folks, we ended up with Measure S, Watsonville. This is the Public Water Additives Bill. 6 of 24 precincts reporting. Remember, this is one of those confusing ones. A no actually means yes to fluoride. And as you see there, it's about a 5% difference as we leave the air, so that one early in Watsonville, so you'll have to check your papers for that result. That's going to do it from here, folks. We want to thank everyone involved with this production, all the people behind the scenes who you don't see, but they make all of us look good. Want to thank you for joining us on Community TV's coverage of Election 2002. For Jeff Dunn, for Rachel, for John, I'm Joel Domhoff. Thanks for watching, everybody. Good night.
I can encourage all labor groups within the region to never feel like you don't have an option. There's always support out there to tap into. So best of luck to everyone who's in the same fight.
Thank you so much. Barry Perkins, I believe a captain with the City of Monterey firefighters. And we're back here at the studio in Santa Cruz. You're listening to KUSP